What made the popular guy/girl lose their popularity? Freshman year of high school. Very popular guy who was the it kid freshman phenom wide receiver on a nationally ranked team. We were all leaving class one day. He randomly decided it was a good idea to make fun of a very well-loved handicap guy who was dying of his condition, some advanced form of water on the brain if I remember correctly, and even decided to punch him. This knocked the poor kid to the ground. About 10 guys immediately jumped him. A shop teacher saw it, the wide receiver getting his, happen and let it continue for a minute before stopping things. Mr. Popular got quite messed up in that short window. Kicked off team, expelled, moved schools in a move that I'm guessing is a way to start over at a new school. Never heard from him again. Went from pep rally king to degenerate outcast in 5 minutes. I had front row seats and was one of the 50 plus who testified to the school admins. The victim passed away later that school year from his condition. You almost never heard him speak, but when he did, he was always kind and thoughtful. Story 2. When I was in 6th grade, one of my classmates brought $90-ish to school. They were going to go shopping after school. She was the most popular girl in class. At some point during the course of the day, the money went missing. Our teacher went right to the superintendent's office, right across the hall from our class. This is a super small school where there were only 212 kids total from kindergarten on up to 12th grade. Within minutes, they had pulled us all out of class and separated out the boys and the girls. The 5th grade teacher took the girls into the bathroom 3 at a time and strip searched them, and the superintendent handled all us boys. I didn't take the money, but I got in a stall, locked it, and refused to come out. I had some serious skid marks going on that day, and no one on this earth needed to go rooting around in my underpants. He finally gave up and let me go. The cop showed up a few hours later and interviewed all of us one by one. A few weeks later, it got out that she forgot to bring the money to school, and it was home in her bedroom the whole time. Despite us being in a rural area and the next nearest school being 50 miles away, the backlash was bad enough that her parents pulled her out of school and sent her to the next town over. In retrospect, people F up, and our anger at her was misplaced compared to the mountain of lawsuits that should have come down on the superintendent. Yeah, I think perspective was definitely lost in this one. The girl obviously made a mistake, and while that was the cause of this issue, there's no excusing the superintendent having little kids strip searched in bathrooms. That's ridiculous. Story 3. Guy wasn't exactly extremely popular to begin with, but was well known. He punched some girl at my school in the face for no reason at a concert. Shortly after this, there was news that he rolled his brand new Camaro going 95 in a 45. This caused him and another guy at our school a lot of injuries. His friend lost his entire ear in the incident. Oh, and this was right after they stole beer from Kroger. They were drunk driving. Anyways, people kept their distance after this. Another kid that comes to mind was someone very popular in our grade. One of my friends went over to his house and used his computer without his permission. My friend ended up finding terabytes of CP on his PC. From what I heard, the FBI even got involved. He never was seen at school again after that. Story 4. Nothing that dramatic, but they graduated high school. Then they became a literal nobody. There was this kid named Matt who spent all of grades 1 through 12 riding his older brother's fame. His older bro was very charismatic and proactive, big into sports, the student council president, valedictorian, highest grades, you name it. Matt just walked in as the little bro and got all the attention and popularity from teachers and students because of who his brother was. It hit him hard when he went to the local university and realized that nobody knew him or paid him any attention. In June, he graduated high school as the valedictorian and had a massive amount of awards and scholarships. By the end of September, only 3 weeks into university, I saw him in a biology class. Your typical first-year general bio class that every program seemed to need. He was one of 500 students in a massive auditorium sitting in the back. I noticed him because he was there with a friend, randomly shouting out comments and funny one-liners to try and mock the professor. The kind of crap that might have had people giggle and comment about, "You're so cool, you're so funny," in grade school. Well, that didn't fly here. Instead of attention, all he got were nasty glares and being ignored by everyone. His entire world crumbled. He went through literal withdrawal from the lack of attention and popularity. Less than 6 weeks into university, he dropped out. My friends and I ran into him at a bowling alley a few years later. He was unrecognizable. From being thin and athletic, he looked like he put on 50 pounds and had a massive beer gut, scruffy beard, and married with 2 kids, each with different mothers. He had the whole world in the palm of his hand, and then reality smacked the life out of him. Story 5. There is a new kid at our school that I'll call Alex for the purposes of this story. He was athletic, funny, good-looking, etc. He got in with the popular kids pretty quick and got along with just about everybody. Small town school. There is a special needs kid in our grade that I'll call Josh. Everybody loved Josh like a little brother, and we were all very protective of him. One day, about a week after Alex got to the school, he was teasing Josh out in the courtyard, and Josh was getting really upset. A few kids told him to cut it out, and Alex got angry, so he pushed Josh. He instantly was attacked by several of the nearby guys, and was getting the snot beaten out of him until the teachers got there. Alex was suspended for 2 weeks, and the guys attacking him were suspended for 1 week. When he got back, he was basically shunned. Nobody would talk to him unless it was school-related. During gym class, people would do whatever they could to exclude him. He switched schools after a few weeks of this. Looking back at it, his treatment was really harsh, but he effing deserved it in my eyes. Story 6. This is actually kind of sad, but the guy I knew was declared Athlete of the Century at our school. He was amazing at football, track, rugby, and wrestling. Didn't play hockey though, which was big where I am. But everyone loved this guy because he almost single-handedly won us provincial championships. I hate to bring this into it, but he was also one of 2 black kids at our school, so he had to really break through some prejudices by some of the people there, as it's a small rural community. But then he suffered a gruesome leg injury that ended his career, so when he stopped playing sports, people sort of forgot about him. This was 12 years ago, and I actually saw him a few months back. He's doing well. I'm 2 years younger, and he was always nice to me. To make it even sadder, last year his brother, another great athlete, took his own life. He didn't go to our school, though, and I didn't know him. Story 7. Here's my story. In 5th grade, we moved and I changed schools. I went from a school in the city where everyone got along and was friends to a school in the suburbs where I was introduced to popular and unpopular for the first time. As a fat, quiet kid, I was quickly deemed unpopular and took my fair share of abuse. Around March or April, my teacher moved our desks around and set up islands of 4 to 5 desks around the room, except for 2. The most popular boy in school was a troublemaker in class, and me, who moved our desks right up next to the side of hers. I later found out she did this for 2 reasons. 1, to keep an eye on him, and 2, she felt I'd be a good influence on him. A funny thing happened. Between then and the end of school, we became best friends, and I became the 2nd most popular kid in school. I started getting invited to birthday parties, kids stopped being crappy to me, I got invited to play football at lunch, and girls liked me. It was amazing. Then summer happened. We were in different classes the next year. He forgot about me, then he moved, and everyone went back to treating me like crap. That's my little story about losing popularity. So I see what the teacher was going for here, but I mean 9 times out of 10, when you put a popular kid and an unpopular kid together, the unpopular kid, in their tameness or whatever you want to roll it as, isn't going to rub off on the recklessness of the popular kid. It's almost always going to go the other way. So not at all surprised to hear that OP became popular by association with the cool kid, and once that connection was broken off, then, he returned to his original form, shall we say. Story 8. Way back when I was in school, a girl who was quite popular decided she could make fun of another kid's Down syndrome sibling in front of her friends. Well, the popular kids in my school weren't jerks, so they didn't laugh and literally turned their backs on her. She was a loner for the rest of the year and went goth the next year, then moved. It wasn't funny at the time, nor is it funny now. Edit. Just for clarification purposes, this was not on school ground. We were at a park one night with a lot of kids hanging out when she did it. She tried to apologize to her friends for some reason, not the kid or his brother. That's when the other kids got in a car and left her alone standing there after telling her it wasn't funny and she should apologize to the kid and his brother, not them. I think this was just one thing in a long line of problems they had with her, and this was just the final one. So the school had no say-so in it, but yes, if it happened in school, she would have gotten in trouble for saying it. She also did very rude hand/arm gestures. Also, side note, when I say no one laughed, I mean no one. It's more like you could hear crickets and the girl laughing until she realized it was only her. Story 9. There was a girl who was super popular all throughout middle school. Then this rumor started that she tempted her dog into sexual acts with peanut butter. The rumor stuck too, like all throughout school, people would say her name and then say, peanut butter, insert name. Like people would write on the whiteboards and everything. I saw her leave class in tears multiple times. It was horrible. The dog was a Cocker Spaniel too, which obviously did not help. The tea, however, was our school junior and senior year offered this special program where half the school got exclusive invites to spend the day making a difference. Literally, it was called Redo Day, and it was apparently pretty intense. It was designed to have people come together and accept differences and stuff, which was kind of stupid considering the absolute abysmal lack of diversity in my school, but I digress. I was never invited, so this part is secondhand, but apparently during the open mic portion where people make admissions and come clean, her twin brother took the mic and fully admitted it was he who started the rumor. That was why the rumor had stuck so hard and effing ruined this girl's whole high school life. Crap was wild. Story 10. A guy in my school, named Otavio, was very popular. Knew almost everyone in 2 different classes. He was also a bit of a bully, made everyone he bullied be silent about it, with the promise that he would beat the ever-living crap out of them if they said anything to their parents. One day, Otavio went to pick on my friend Paul. Now, here be noted, Paul was and probably still is the biggest badass that's ever stepped into that building. He was able to insult you to such a level he would make you cry. That is, if you try to do the same to him. Otavio went on to try to insult Paul, saying he was fat and ugly. He was also slightly racist, since he said Paul didn't deserve to be there since he was black. Paul then decided to say this, "Well, at least I don't have a broken nose." "Broken nose?" asked Otavio, not knowing he was about to see the bright shining light of the afterlife. Before Paul could fully answer though, I went to get some water, and I just hear Otavio screaming like a effing banshee. I go back to see what happened, and he's just rolling on the floor, crying and screaming. A small amount of blood could also be seen coming from his nose. Paul got in trouble, of course, but Paul's act made the kids Otavio bullied actually say what was happening to them. And then Otavio was taken out of the school by his parents, which I assume were just tired of having to deal with the other parents. I think they were a bit of a Karen couple, because according to the teachers, Otavio's parents were stating that Otavio was innocent and was actually the one getting bullied, the only proof being Paul's punch. Paul became more popular than Otavio, since he gained both the respect of the teachers, Otavio's old friends, and the kids Otavio bullied. Honestly, I'm gonna regret all of my actions if I ever insult Paul, even in the ever so slightest, because I'm scared he's gonna break each and every one of my bones. Story 11. Wouldn't say he was popular, as this was college, but everyone knew him and he was well liked. All around really friendly, the life of the party, and just a very open person. He stole money from a lot of people, and it was all at once. So it was a film school. We were on a project filing at a house. The bottom floor, which was just a room in the garage, is where people stored all their stuff, like book bags and equipment that was not currently being used. This guy went through everyone's stuff and stole any cash he could find. I lost only $5, though when I got home that night and couldn't do laundry, I was a bit peeved. But some kids lost hundreds. There were people always coming and going in that place, and it was only the crew, so no one thought the stuff was unsafe down there. I was down there at some point, just taking a snack break with another person, and saw him going through bags. He made up some BS that he was looking for his friend's bag and her car keys. At the time, I believed him and didn't think anything more of it, until it came out that people were missing money. He was of course found out because I was not the only one who saw him rifling through stuff, and it turned out he was a serious drug addict. I'm talking heroin drug addict. They found his stash when going through his dorm room. He was dismissed from the school, and that's the last I heard of him. Wonder what happened to him. Also, never got my $5 back. Story 12. She had the compulsive habit of backstabbing all of her close friends, then clinging to the less popular girls she had bullied because there was nobody else left. She'd literally backstab her way down the social food chain. I watched in middle school as she went from the most popular girl to the least popular, and then she ended up leaving at around 6th grade. Then we found our way into the same high school, lucky me, where I watched, slightly bullied, mostly ignored, from afar as she made enemies of every popular girl in school. By the end of it, she started to cling to me. I was so annoyed that when I found out she got expelled, I laughed in her face as she cried with her mom right there. To date, it's the only time I've ever done that. Yay, not a sociopath. When she announced, "I'm expelled," with tears down her face in the hallway, it was like a movie scene. At least 20 high school freshmen high-fiving one another in the hallway. Suddenly, popularity status didn't matter. We were all happy to get rid of her. I'll never forget one boy's quote as the door hit her ass on the way out. "That girl went from the crap to a crap." Story 13. My mom was incredibly popular in college. She was beautiful, charismatic, very smart, and loved to party. She also didn't give a F what race, gender, or sexuality you were. This was in the 80s, and her closest friends were also the ones who liked to party pretty hard. Because of this, she became very aware of AIDS pretty early, and realized pretty quickly which of her gay friends were very at risk. The risk was also high for a lot of people who like to do drugs, have wild and unprotected sex, the people she regularly partied with. So she spoke with her college health department and then the school board about setting up an info station, run by the school and the local health centers, on school grounds to help keep the students safe. They told her they could give her resources and she could do what she wanted, but they would not host it themselves. Thinking that she could use her popularity to get people behind her, she set it up herself. She got information, pamphlets, condoms, everything she could get to help spread the word. Then she set up an info booth at the college to try to promote safe sex and drug use, and to spread awareness of AIDS. She was unpopular within one day, because at the time, the only people who talked about this were gay people with it. It was really hard for her at the time. She kept a few friends, but most didn't want anything to do with her anymore. She kept it up though, and when she graduated and left, it had picked up and still was going on yearly last time she checked. She never got credit for it, but she was very happy she did. She said that if she helped one or two people, that's all that mattered. Story 14. The guy was accused of SA, only to find out years later it was a false allegation, but the damage was already done. I've posted about it before. Here it is. The star football player was accused of SAing someone in the bathroom. This ruined his life, and subsequently, he was in custody/juvie/jail, unsure which, for quite a while. All potential scholarships now gone, and no hope of a career in sports. This happened when I just entered high school. I didn't know the guy, but I saw him regularly. He was the school's pride and joy before the allegations. Time moves forward, and it turns out he did not SA anyone. I'm unsure if the girl recanted her allegation or what. This was 15 plus years ago, so a lot of details are hard to remember. But it was too late. The damage was done. This all happened over the course of about 3 years. He ended up coming back to school, unsure as to how or why, but I suppose he was just trying to pick up where he'd left off. He was just different. His face, his demeanor, everything. He was no longer the same person, and it was gut-wrenching. He was an incredibly nice and fun guy before everything happened, but once he came back, he was just a hardened a-hole, always looking for a fight. He was conditioned to accept the street life, for lack of a better term, for a crime he didn't even commit, and even thinking about all these years later fills me with intense, equal parts of sadness and rage. Story 15. Back in my high school days in the early 2000s, there was this football player who was liked by everyone. One day after a summer break, it was revealed to the whole school that he was gay. There were a lot of rumors about how he was outed. Some believable ones, like he came out to someone who he thought he could trust, to outlandish accusations of him trying to force himself onto one of his friends. Regardless, once school started, he was ostracized by his old group of friends. There were some people who tried to befriend him afterwards, but he would brush them off. After about 4 months, he stopped coming to school. Never heard anything about him after that. I often think about how just 20 years can change people's viewpoints. Had he been in high school today, I would imagine his coming out would have gone a bit better, but who knows. Story 16. When I was in year 6, a lot of the cool kids had been in a fight with some of the cool kids from a different local primary school, but this one guy fled when he saw they were coming. The other cool kids were roasting him about it for a few weeks, but he never lost popularity until he decided to try and end the roasting session by starting a fight with the least popular guy in our class, me. Little did he know, I have only one strength when it comes to fighting, which is I'm very difficult to knock down. I can't really throw a punch to save my life, but I don't go down easy. He was able to convince me and a large portion of my class over to his corner of the school field, which wasn't really monitored by teachers, and he just started hitting me. I didn't hit back because I didn't want to get in trouble, and I couldn't get away because the class had formed a kind of barricade, so I just blocked or dodged as best I could until after 10 minutes or so of it. Another popular boy in our class grabbed me around the shins to help trip me so the would-be bully could hit me easier. and for good measure, his tripper stole my shoes off my feet and threw them into a bramble bush. The aftermath had the formerly popular boy going to a different secondary school to everyone else because he lost all credibility after not being able to beat up someone after 10 minutes of them not even fighting back. Tripper was bullied so hard for being a little bastard that he didn't even wait for secondary school. He was transferred from school within a few weeks, and I actually rose up in the social rankings and spent secondary school in this wonderful middle ground where the popular guys were nice to me without sacrificing the respect of the other nerdy guys. Story 17. In secondary school, high school in America, I think, this girl in the year above me, I think she was 15 or 16 years old, died. She was walking home from her friend's house and this drunk driver in a van crashed into her. Her body went flying into a nearby bush. There were multiple assemblies for her. People came in to speak about alcohol and drunk driving, and the girl's mother set up a campaign in her name. Anyway, she was a really sweet girl and had a lot of friends. A couple days after the accident, this popular kid in my year was going around telling this horrible joke, elephant versus truck. That's what he said whenever someone spoke about her. The girl who died was a little big. I wouldn't have called her fat, but he obviously thought she was. Anyway, apart from maybe a couple of his closest friends, no one found it funny at all. He lost most of his friends, got in a lot of trouble, and got kicked out of school. I think he ended up joining the army sometime after that. So two pretty egregious faux pas here, making fun and jokes about someone that is recently deceased, especially a child, and two, body shaming. Not appropriate, not funny, and glad to hear that he was kind of blackballed after that. Story 18. Our school had an account system where parents and students could deposit funds and use them to order Subway lunches. During my 9th grade year, there were rumors that parents were complaining about missing funds disappearing from their accounts, but the school had no way of finding out. Then, one day, a teacher found the popular girl logging into someone else's account and ordering lunch for herself. Turned out that she had been doing this for months, stealing the account info from her friends and other students so she could use their money to buy herself lunch. No one knew she was doing this, not even her own friends. The school was small, so word spread within a couple days, and she went from being the most respected and well-liked student in the grade to the girl that no one could trust anymore. Her friends acted like they didn't know her. She dropped out and became a pothead. It's sad because she was a great girl with an amazing future ahead of her. Story 19. Not my story, but my mom. She was the popular girl at her high school from about freshman to junior year. Cheerleader, National Honor Society, homecoming queen, all that jazz. Just before her senior year, her dad, my grandpa, gets a transfer at his job, forcing a move. They go from small-town Texas to small-town IDK, want to say one of the Dakotas? Here's the thing. She's introduced, and it's like everyone's nice to her at first, and suddenly they find out who her dad was. In the words of Ron Burgundy, Grandpa was kind of a big deal. My grandfather worked in the armed forces and basically was the head of the local military base. Essentially speaking, the other base kids were now afraid of her because her dad was their parents' boss, and I guess the local teenage population just didn't care for the local baser kids, which meant that my mom's senior year, she didn't really have any friends. She did say, however, the stoner kids would sit with her on the bus / at lunch because they were totally friendly with everyone and she didn't mind the smell. Then again, my mom was so sheltered, she didn't know what weed was until like a few years later, and she was like, wait, that's not just a weird body spray? Story 20. Okay, let me add a serious one in here while we're in here. There was a very popular guy, at least he was back in the days. Everyone liked the guy, never made any fights or caused disagreements with other people. Perhaps not the most morally just person, but none could have known that a guy relatively young would be up to such depraved stuff whilst seemingly doing good for himself. He once told me it was so weird for me to keep a few images of some nice adult models in my folder on my PC. Booty. And now I know why he said that, as it probably was only a manipulative strategy of some sort. So, what did he do that caused the entire semi-small city to hate him and shun him? One early summer day, his apartment was raided by police, where they beat him up for a bit before dragging him out. Shows they've been following him on the dark web, and he had more than a few hundred CP movies and thousands of pictures in his own possession. FBI caused this guy and had been gathering intel on him for a long time before they busted him. I remember the report stated that even if it was a CP case, the video and files were highlighted to be significantly extremely disturbing or repellent. He denied, but got sentenced. This was a guy that everyone liked. He never ever caused anyone to think otherwise, and I learned a valuable lesson. He was popular, and girls and women were on this guy all the time because of some charm trait, but he never cared about them. He wanted the young ones, and he was a top-class groomer. He never got to chicks once they started moving past 14 to 16. Probably them either, and now we know why. That's what caused him to lose his so-called popularity. Story 21. I was popular. My school was super small, less than 200, so we didn't have the more typical popular types, but I was well liked. I was the smart girl that helped everyone with homework. I never did it for them. I more or less tutored, but made sure it was done correctly. I was always invited to parties because I had a reputation of driving people home and not spreading gossip. I broke up with my boyfriend senior year. I don't recall the details. He was being weird, and I thought he was being too serious, when the reality was we were going to take different paths after high school. I cried my heart out to my best friend for a week. Everyone was super nice to me that week because, my school was full of sympathetic people. Then, sometime later, I helped my best friend finish her homework in the hall before school, but something was off. I didn't see her again until lunch, and I asked what was up. She said very loudly that we would talk about it after school. It was humiliating at the time. After school, she asked me to ride with her so we could talk. I got in and found my ex-boyfriend in the truck. They took me down a dead-end road, obviously rehearsed, took turns telling me that I need to move on, they're a couple now, and as proof of his love for my best friend, dumped gas on a t-shirt I had bought for him and lit it on fire. They left me there. The next day, everyone knew what happened, and I was avoided like the plague. They were afraid of any association with me. My last months in high school were hell. Teachers noticed and let me get away with shoddy work while still giving me good grades, though. About 5 years later, still in my small town, I attended a function and ran into my best friend. Small towns have a pecking order, and I'd been promoted to the top due to who I was dating. Ex-friend asked me to forgive anything she might have done as a kid. She needed my partner's family's roundabout support for some referendum her family was trying to push. I kinda scoffed and just walked away. 10 years after that, I find myself married to someone from a different town, with a house and career, and still friends with the boyfriend from the above paragraph. We had separated on mutual terms, and it just was meant to be. Ex-best friend is fat, living in a dump of a house in a ghost town, with 2 kids she seems to regret and a worthless husband, and working at KFC. Ex-boyfriend is absent from social media, but his grandma babysat my daddy when he was a baby and adores me. So I've been privy to the fact that he's been to rehab and works at the junkyard. Story 22. 8th grade, 2-star athletes, Joe and Brian, were heckling me doing a presentation because I had an unwanted erection. I had a temper and they were trying to get a rise out of me. Normally they would have, but not that day. Teacher had enough of their heckling and gave them both 4 weeks detention each. Brian took it maturely. Joe didn't. Later that week, Joe called the teacher's house asking her, "Hey, you want to give me a BJ?" Those were his actual words. She *69 the number. I'm really dating myself here, and got his voicemail where it said, "Yo, this is Joey, leave a message." Police got involved, and because it was less than a month to go before graduation, they couldn't expel him. He was just suspended for the rest of the year and couldn't walk at graduation. He later got expelled from the same high school twice and did some of his high school days in an alternative school. Nowadays, he's still a junkie like he was in 8th grade and still in his juvenile bullcrap despite being 30. He has 2 kids he doesn't support. A loser in every way. Same with Brian, but at least he walked at 8th grade graduation. Story 23. I was the popular girl in middle school, but in high school, I got in an abusive, toxic relationship, and he really made sure I was isolated from everyone else. So he and his family was all I had. I also suffered from severe PTSD from my childhood. This made it so much worse. A video of him throwing his dog down the stairs got passed around too. That made everyone hate him, and I got a lot of bad rep as well. Tried to overdose freshman year and got back-acted and got help I needed, but couldn't leave the relationship, although I tried about 6 times over the span of 3 years. Every time he would threaten self-unaliving, him spreading my photos and blackmail and a bunch of crap. I was truly trapped, lost and disconnected with so many of my friends. I went from the girl who was friends with everyone, had all the guys, threw huge parties, to the girl who was hit and emotionally abused by her sociopathic boyfriend. No one wanted to hang out with me, and if they did, I was so broken inside it was hard to. He would shut down anything for good for me that wasn't him. I was eating lunch by myself or with the special needs kids and never went out to do anything but on occasion. People knew what was going on but kept their distance because it was obvious things weren't going to change for me. I left him in April 2020 and the past year has been full of craziness, mainly just diving into crazy experiences because he kept me so trapped and confined from experiencing or doing anything in high school. Lots of drugs, sex, alcohol, and more unhealthy relationships, and even got into bad debt. Lost a high-paying job, and expelled from school. Now, I reconnected with all my friends, made more, and now I'm in counseling, therapy, and have been sober and am making a good life for myself. I'm in school and plan to go into the military and then become a nurse. I do not know if I'm popular or well-known like I was in middle school, but things like that don't matter to me anymore. I have great friends and family and love myself now, and that's all that matters. Story 24. It was at a girl's 18th birthday. I was not really popular, not really an outcast, and had known the birthday girl since we were 9, so I got an invite. I was also a mid-level alcoholic and had started drinking at 2 p.m., so by 1 a.m. I was extremely drunk. But I'm just a chilled out, talk constant nonsense kind of drunk, and I like to think I'm pretty funny, so everyone was having a good time, apart from Sadie. Sadie, she was generally a massive female dog, but popular girl TM. So got invited to everything anyway. Sadie was getting more and more sick of my crap and eventually came out with, "Shut up, Dibs 234, no one cares." My drunk brain was not about to let me down. One of those bypass thought straight to vocal cords type responses. F off, Sadie, just cause my tits are bigger than yours. Everyone just effing lost it. She kept trying to say something back, but couldn't get a word in. No one had ever shut her down before, but the floodgates were open now, and people were just effing done with her. She stopped getting invited to things. People would just tell her to F off when she started on her whiny crap. I'm still pretty proud of the response. Story 25. I went to school with this cute girl. We'll call her Amy because I forget her name, which is bad, I know, but I also didn't know her personally. Well, Amy was extremely popular because of how cute she was and all that jazz. Well, we had a new guy come to our school sophomore year, and shortly after, he and Amy became friends, and they got close and eventually ended up dating, which is natural. Well, Amy lost a lot of popularity with everyone because the dude wasn't the school football/basketball star or anything like that. He was just a normal dude who had his likes and dislikes. All kinds of nasty rumors and everything else was spread about them as well. Whenever people would talk to me about it, I just said, "What are you guys so worried about what she's doing? If they like each other and they're happy, leave them alone." Most of the time, you can imagine, I got the response you would all expect. But that was my take on it, and I found it incredibly stupid that it was even front page news in my school. Crap like that was part of the reason why I hated school. They broke up shortly after we graduated high school because he moved to England to go to college, and she went to work for her family's restaurant that they used to own in our area. That's the last I heard about her. Story 26. A little late, but there was a girl I was in school with, basically from kindergarten to high school. She wasn't super popular in middle school, but she was smart, nice, respectful, had a good group of friends, and was well liked by basically everyone. Nothing really stood out about her looks. I thought she was pretty, but she definitely wasn't one of the 10 or so girls that everyone my age seemed to drool over. Fast forward to the first day of freshman year of high school, and you couldn't recognize her. She went from 13 to 17, literally transformed from plain Jane, barely 5 feet beanpole, to stacked goddess in 3 months since graduating middle school. It was awkward watching nearly every junior and senior dude fawn all over someone you knew was only 14, hitting on her, asking her out, offering her rides. She ended up dating the varsity basketball captain, who was a junior by the second week of school, and within a month was seemingly the most popular girl at a school of at least 2,000 students. Sometime near Thanksgiving, word got out that she and her BF had broken up. Then rumors started going around that she cheated on him with another dude on the basketball team. Eventually, the story became that she was at a small party with her boyfriend and a couple of other members of the team. They were drinking, and somehow he supposedly convinced her to strip and dance naked in front of the group, with things eventually progressing to a supposed four-way. I always knew her as sweet, innocent, and reserved. I assumed that the rumor mill took something mild like her getting drunk and kissing another dude, and the telephone game ended up turning her into an adult content star. That was until her ex's younger brother got his hands on a Polaroid from his room and had it photocopied, passing it around the school. I didn't see it personally, but I was told it was a blurry pixelated picture of her naked with 4 dudes around her, doing things. It was supposedly such a bad quality picture that she probably could have just claimed that it wasn't her. Not sure why she didn't at least try. I felt horrible for her. A few of her friends tried to do some damage control, telling a story where the guys got her drunk and her boyfriend pressured her into doing it. But people started calling her blow bang and 4-way, and Jesus Christ, kids were so unbelievably mean to her. This was in 1990, and for whatever reason, no legal recourse came of it. Teachers never mentioned it, and the pictures never resurfaced that I'm aware of, but the damage was done. Unfortunately, she didn't make it long. She never came back from Christmas break that year and ended up moving with her grandparents in Florida, finishing high school there. I ran into her a few times as she'd come home to visit her parents during school breaks, and her parents' house happened to be right down the road from mine. Obviously, never talked about it, just exchanged pleasantries. I ran into her and a few of her friends at a bar in the next town over, right after we all had just turned 21, and we talked for a while. She referred to the event as the catastrophe. I told her I felt terrible that it happened to her. She shared that she wasn't that drunk, but her boyfriend threatened to break up with her and go back to his ex if she didn't play along. And she was head over heels in love with the dude, like obsessed to the point of carving his initials into her leg and crap. She told me that she never thought someone so beautiful and popular could want her, and at the same time, she was willing to do basically anything for him, or anything to keep him. Remember, she wasn't unpopular or bullied before this. Nearly everyone liked her. In that 3 months with him, she had given him her virginity. He basically expected sex every day, and she made every second of the day about him. Being with him, counting the seconds until she could see him again. She was convinced she was going to marry him and admitted she was so crazy about him, she probably would have shot her parents if he asked her to in order for them to be together. Her parents wanted her to seek legal recourse, but she refused, promised them she'd unalive herself if they went after him, or even talk to his parents, the school, or the police. She went to Florida because the only other option presented to her was to be admitted to an institution. Pay attention, kids. This is why it's important to avoid relationships where there's such a huge imbalance of power. That night at the bar was 23 years ago, and we're still married to this day. Just kidding. I never saw her again, but I thought about her from time to time. She was a good person, and I really hope life worked out well for her. S, if you're reading this, K was a total douche, and last I heard, he was still living at home, got addicted to oxys at some point, and was working as a DJ doing weddings and birthday parties. Story 27. On Halloween of 1998, I was a freshman in high school. I had a sister who was a senior, a brother who was a sophomore, and a sister with an intellectual disability. My sister with the disability had been really excited to go trick-or-treating, so I took her. As we were walking in a dark spot between 2 houses, 3 guys came out from behind a parked car. One of them pushed my sister down and took her candy. One grabbed me, and the other punched me in the face and took my bag of candy. My sister ran home screaming, and I followed her to make sure she got home. When she was inside and screaming, my dad and brother came downstairs to find out what was going on. I told them that some guys just hit my sister and I was going out to get them. My dad stopped me, but he and my brother went out looking for the guys in his car. They saw the 3 guys with our ugly-ass pillowcases, and my dad said something to them and they took off. However, my brother recognized them from school and told my older sister who they were. One of the guys was a football star of our high school who everybody loved. My older sister was fairly popular and told everybody the next day that he hit her little disabled sister. He was kicked off the team and he became known as the guy who beat up a little disabled girl. His girlfriend broke up with him and everybody pretty much stopped talking to him altogether. Story 28. He turned our high school graduation party into his official coming out party. Everyone knew he was gay and he told some people, but nobody cared and nobody brought it up. He was a cool guy who was easy to get along with, but obviously basked in the popularity. Come graduation, we had about 300 of us in a venue the school had rented for us, and about 30 had chosen to do a speech together about our collective time through high school, each person representing a few of the kids who chose against participating. They rehearsed some lines, and the whole thing was planned to be about 15 minutes. Mr. Popular was first to speak, and he immediately, from what I've been told, went off script. He went into his own monologue, which lasted about 5 minutes, and finished by saying high school was about learning if you're straight or gay. And he raised his arms to the side as if we were all supposed to get on our knees and worship him. Everybody, from the audience to the other kids who were going to speak, to the staff and parents, were all so silent that you could hear a pin drop. Nobody said anything, but you could hear everyone's collective, "What the F?" Then everyone awkwardly clapped and all the other kids left the stage with him. We had 2 months left of school and practically everyone stopped talking to him. I heard from many people that they knew he was gay, and if he spent his about 20 seconds of scripted monologue to tell us how important it is to feel comfortable in your own skin or with your own sexuality, it'd have been fine. But he basically did the most selfish thing possible and ruined it for everyone else. Well, he had a good run, I guess. LOL. Story 29. Wasn't that popular, but he was memed around the school until he started getting a bit weirder, which caused a few kids to despise him until it happens. Let's call him Memed Kid. So I walked to class and a kid asked me if I knew Meme Kid. I said I did. Then later, Theo, me of my teachers, talked to one of my other classes about a school shooting threat and how a whistleblower could have saved us. I whistle pumped up kicks and most kids are laughing except Memed Kid, who yelled at me to shut up. Later, I was walking with a friend and she told me that Memed Kid was the one behind the threat. It turned out he was discussing to someone about shooting up the school, but someone overheard and reported it and police got involved. Even though the kid was kept anonymous, I think the reporter had spread the news around to the point everyone knew before teachers brought it up. I don't think any incriminating evidence was found, but it was rumored he had a hit list of kids he despised, and then people started making fun of him because of it. Hence the nickname Hit List Kid, and becoming the subject of jokes that involve lists. Once in my bio class, we were told to make a list, and a kid said, "Bruh, I'm not Memed Kid." He transferred out later by the end of the year. Then a popular kid from my middle school unalived himself, and almost everyone forgot about him after. Story 30. I love telling this story. This happened last year, actually. My friend, let's call him A. A was a little goofy, super loud, but all around a great human being. He was a little on the heavier side and wore super powerful glasses because he was basically blind without them. His family didn't have much money, but they provided enough for him to have these special glasses and play basketball for our team. One kid, B, was an asshat. If you weren't fit, popular, and athletic, he would bully you and beat the crap out of you for some reason. But boy was B popular. After a basketball game loss, we all went into the locker room and talked and screwed around for a few minutes until we hear yelling and pounding. Someone got thrown against the lockers. I walk over to the other end to see A sitting there crying. I look up and the door is shutting. I check up on him and he's obviously hurt physically and emotionally. He holds up his hand and in them there are shards of glass and glasses frames. B told A that he was the reason we sucked and he should unalive himself, etc. I drove him home, still crying all the way home. He only mutters the kid's name. The next day, I got the team together and told them what happened. They were pissed off. Everyone was friendly to A. They weren't necessarily friends, but they were all friendly and supportive. We told the coach, and he wouldn't do anything. So we spread the word around about B beating up A. Everyone ate it up. We started a GoFundMe page and raised about money to not only get A new glasses, but also have eye surgery. A few weeks later, B was arrested for assault. No one talks to him anymore. Story 31. There's this one girl that was pretty popular throughout my year, 2012. She had good grades, almost the entire class on her side, in the cadet team, and is good at piano. But she's the type of girl that would be friends with you, then talks crap behind your back. She had made most of her friends cry because of that. But there are 3 things she did that messed up her secondary 4 to 6 school years pretty badly. We'll call her J. 1. During the middle of secondary 2, J was rallying people to bully the overall nice girl. She's literally the kind who anyone could talk to. Very charismatic, also has good grades, and I still believe to this day, prettier than that female dog. But then someone snitched, and she immediately shifted the blame to the non-popular kids, me included. The teachers bought Jay's sob story on how she was protecting nice girl from us, but everyone else didn't. We got punished, but she and her goons didn't. But the boys in our class didn't really like what she did to the nice girl, so she basically lost their support. 2. Nearing the end of secondary 3, we'll have this thing called a graduation concert. It's basically where each class sets a theme and performs on stage for 45 minutes, graduating us from being stupid kids to confused teenagers. And since she's the main director of our class's concert, she basically was in charge with everything. During that time, she made up some bullcrap story that her partner, the co-director H, who plays the saxophone on roller skates really good, was hitting on her, which no one believed her. Then, on the actual day of our performance, she made a lot of last-minute changes to our show, including the lineups of the performing groups. My group was basically shoved on stage, unprepared and horrified, as more than 1,000 pair of eyes were staring at us. And of course, Jay's performance was put last for the grand finale. Her group was supposed to perform during the middle, and she basically told the other groups to F off and perform, since her group wasn't ready, and henceforth she became more unpopular. 3. She was dating one of the popular boys during secondary 1 to the beginning of secondary 4. They were basically the it pair at the moment, but because our school mixes students into different classes, so popular boy was in the same class. And he began to rant about how manipulative and controlling Jay was being. He didn't even like her. She basically walked up to him and told him, "We're dating now," then took a crap ton of pictures and posting it on Instagram. Another girl, we'll call her C, told popular boy to stand up for himself and go straighten things out with Jay. And so they broke up. Jay was livid when she heard popular boy ask C to go out with him, and so she made a bunch of Instagram accounts to talk crap behind C's back, rallying people to bully C. But little did she know, C was a tough cracker and wasn't afraid of her manipulative bullcrap. Jay's plan failed and everyone knew about what she did. Let's just say she hangs out with a smaller group of friends now. Story 32. Allegedly, he got really messed up on something. I want to say it was ecstasy, and beat somebody's rabbit to death with a golf club. I remember him being pretty shunned after those allegations, although I tried not to judge him on hearsay and was still nice to him, because he was very nice to me. I was not a popular person in high school. Although I could see on his face a lot of regret and shame, leading me to believe it was true. Edit. Also, this unbelievably attractive girl I worked at a restaurant with went to a school in a neighboring city. I asked about her to a friend I went to community college with that went to high school with her. Apparently, she went on a Caribbean cruise, hooked up with a guy on the cruise, caught the trots, and ended up crapping all over him while they were having sex. She told her best friend, who told the entire school. F's in the chat. Story 33. In middle school, this girl's mom had a stroke and ended up needing help around the house. She was wheelchair bound and could do most things, but anything she had to get up for, she couldn't do. So if she had to get something out of an upper cabinet or get up to use the bathroom, she would struggle or require help. Well, this girl brought a couple of her friends over, and her mom apparently needed help using the bathroom. The girl ignored her completely and just locked herself in her room. Her mom ended up soiling herself and falling out of her wheelchair onto the floor, and was quietly sobbing and begging for help. The girl turned up her music to drown out her mom so the friends couldn't hear her. The friends got so skeeved out that they ended up calling the dad, as they weren't sure what to do. They were like 12. And he came home from work and apparently chewed the girl out as her friends were leaving about how she, quote, keeps doing this. I never saw her after graduation. She ended up switching school districts because she became such a pariah in middle school. Story 34. When I was in school, someone very close to me had one of the worst high school experiences ever. I'm Irish, and Ireland is a country with deep Catholic roots. This girl was 2 years below me, and she was one of the sweetest, gentle, kind-hearted people I know. She's funny and smart, artistic and quite beautiful, so she quickly became popular with the it girls in her year. Well, these girls became promiscuous fairly early in their secondary school years, two especially, both of whom were close friends of this girl. When both had pregnancy scared, and this girl didn't, they began trying to convince her that maybe she was pregnant by her boyfriend at the time. Word quickly spread, to the point where the principal of the school, who's a turd, alerts all the parents of that year groups to this young lady's indiscretion. This girl quickly gains a reputation as a slut by her year, and whispers of her pregnancy travel throughout the small rural Irish town. Through all of this, the girl's friends stick by her. That is, of course, until she's faced with indefinite suspension by the school. It's at this point that she's forced to come out and say that she cannot be pregnant because she's not attracted to the guy she was supposed to have slept with. The matter is pressured until she has to tell everybody that she's gay. Well, her friends drop her in a second. None of the adults concerned apologize. In fact, it results in vicious homophobic bullying and a total ousting of her socially. Her former friends begin to invent tales of times she came onto them, and to my knowledge, this treatment has only recently subsided. Story 35. I went from that awkward kid my freshman year to ending up in a commercial, then photographed with the popular kids, and me maturing a bit became popular by my sophomore year. Wasn't into sport. Gained friends really because was a decent human. Realization that we have a commonality. Friend groups included the weed crowd. Got busted with a joint in my vehicle on property and 2-week suspension. My brother had lined up a trip for himself months prior to Hawaii and asked if I wanted to go. Hindsight, he also wanted to get me away from the bad influences. I'd never been in trouble. High marks with grades. Involved with political arts of high school. Class rep, treasurer. I get back from Hawaii and find out through friends, my parents couldn't talk about it, that there was a newspaper article, pre-internet, I'm Reddit old, about drug culture in schools which used me as an example of parents essentially rewarding the horrors of drugs. Almost everyone shunned me, assumption being my parents gave the institution the finger and promoted me smoking. They didn't and were very ashamed. Guess you find out who your friends are. I was so depressed, the fringe kids at the time sort of respected my tribulation and took me in. I did more drugs, didn't finish high school, was taking college-level courses my junior year, and of course, hard to get behind on that crap. It was very difficult for me to trust or have self-esteem after being shunned. Sometimes the ones who fall deserve some consideration and more information on the circumstances. Story 36. This is actually about me. I was super popular in 4th grade. I had all the kids at recess playing a game where I was a queen of practically all fake creatures, vampire, werewolf, goblin, etc. Because I had such a wild imagination, I had amazing stories for us to portray. Everyone loved me. If a kid did something to upset me, I kicked them out of my game and everyone stopped talking to them. If they weren't in my class, they were released from prison until next recess. End of the school year, my mom decided I was too happy to go to school and transferred me across the township so I was with people I never met. 5th grade, I started out recess asking who wanted to be my subjects because I was the queen of evil creatures. Didn't go as well as I thought and I was bullied mercilessly. I was bullied bad up until graduation of high school. It gave me huge depression and several self-unaliving attempts. I'm currently 21 and have 0 friends because I'm scared if I connect to anyone, they'll hate me and I'll lose them. So this is very unfortunate. First of all, what kind of parent says, "Hey, child of mine, you're too happy. You're enjoying school a little bit too much. Let me get you out of there." Like, what? Who does that? And then the snowball effect is the result of that decision. Now she's 21 with no friends, and I mean, like, why would you do that? Why? Story 37. I was really close friends with this dude who was like city popular. Like, people from different schools were effing with him and thus with our whole friend group. He was really effing cool dude with hella charisma, so he was easily one of the most popular teens. But one night, he and our friend group, I was homesick, were having a party and they got pretty wasted. And for the dumbest reason I still can't understand, he and 4 others hopped into a car and went driving. Well, luckily nobody got killed, but yeah, he ended up driving the car off the road at like 100 kph speed and the car was totally destroyed. He obviously got all the blame for it and really everyone dropped him instantly except me. Like, I don't condone drunk driving ever, but to be honest, it really could have been any one of those 4 others behind that wheel, and they all were really gassing him up to go for a drive. I haven't really seen him properly since that year, 2017, because we really just went our different ways, but he helped me through a lot of crap for no gain a few years before that. So, drunk driver, yes. Hella sad it came into that, but on his best, he was as best as a friend has been for me. Story 38. There are only 2 openly gay guys at my high school. I was one of them. A rumor circulated that the other gay was sending chicken pics to the football team. I have severe doubts about the rumor because 2 of my best friends were on the football team and hadn't gotten anything uncouth. Also, I was effing the other gay, so like, why would he need to do any of that? Anyway, one of the mega-het, super aggro football players took matters into his own hands and beat the crap out of the other gay so hard the dude needed glasses after. There was supposedly a puddle of blood on the floor. Everyone else was made to stay in the classrooms. This happened between classes, while they got everything cleaned up. The football guy was immediately expelled and either got sent to an alternative school or went straight to juvie. Not sure, I didn't care enough to find out. Never heard about him again after a while though. How's that for a fall from grace? The chicken pick rumor didn't stop after either. The teachers and staff had to actively shut the rumor down with harsh detention and suspension handouts. Story 39. A popular guy started dating a popular girl. The dude ended up cheating on the girl, who was very sweet. Around a year later, she forgave him and got back together with him, but she broke up with him again after he shot her with a BB gun to wake her up. Wasn't very popular after this after people found out what a jerk he was. There was also a girl who was pretty popular at my high school who lost it sometime after high school because she basically became a misandrist. She celebrates when guys get killed. Any guy, not just bad guys, and just wishes guys didn't exist. She rages at people and causes drama on Facebook for no reason. Example, one guy asked for advice on how to breed dogs, and she started raging, "Don't breed dogs, you dickhead!" She also thinks everything is transphobic. I understand disliking transphobia, but you basically can't say anything without this girl calling you a transphobe. Story 40. Ooh, I actually have a story for once. Firstly, context. Everyone in this story are either teachers or year 13 students in their last year of 6th form studying for levels. Me included. This also takes place around last November. Okay, so my 6th form has COVID restrictions for obvious reasons. One of them being that if there's a positive test result for COVID, the entire year gets sent home so we don't infect the rest of the school. Now, this is mostly secondhand info, but it's all accurate. I heard most of them from the guy I share a desk with in a class who did not see this inciting incident. The first part of the story is from his perspective. I shall name him Steve. Not real name, by the way. On to the culprit. Now, this dude, I shall name him Jeremy. Not his real name, but you get the point. He was decently popular, was sitting in a lesson, and suddenly got a phone call, and went into the hall to take it. According to Steve, there is a lot of murmuring about what it could be about. A dead loved one, maybe? So Jeremy comes back in and says to the teacher, "Sir, I've tested positive." Yep, this absolute moron of untold proportions was waiting for a COVID test and came in anyway. What the F is wrong with this guy? So our entire year got sent home around 2 hours into the school day. This F's up everyone's situation. Some people need trains home, some can walk, and some need rides. I could walk home, thankfully, but we were stuck self-isolating for the day. This guy's popularity plummets. On the way out of the gate, we were all saying aloud how much of a bloody idiot he is. He lost it all. He even got some death threats. I don't condone that. It was effed up. Worst part, it turned out to be a false positive. He had lost everything for a false positive. The damage was done though. Everyone knew that he didn't care about the safety of people around him. A decent number of people at my 6th form have some health conditions as well. This guy remains humiliated to this day. So yeah, that's my story. Story 41. I don't have a lost his popularity story, but more of a how the hell did he stay popular story. This dude was notorious for acting straight up heinous outside of school. He was friends with the popular guys in the grade below mine, so I heard a lot of stuff secondhand about his senior year. Apparently, he stepped his game up. First, he would borrow money from people and refuse to pay them back. When he was hanging out with a buddy of mine who loaned him money, literally $20, my friend jokingly held him at BB gunpoint to get his cash back. Jim proceeds to pull a knife on my friend and threaten to kill him over it. My friend tells the whole school and not a damn thing happened, but everyone else going, "Looks like Jim is at it again." Mandatory, not his actual name. Later on, Jim got caught with another guy's dog doing the classic peanut butter on your balls thing. Again, the whole school found out not a day later, and again, the response was, "Jim is at it again." After that, once high school parties really got rolling, he took the "don't pass out with your shoes on, you'll get effed with" rule and ran with it. His favorite move was to take his pants off and beef stew anybody who passed out with their shoes on, literally pressing people's noses to his a-hole and ripping whatever foul humors had built up inside of him on whoever it was that passed out. Popular guy, popular girl, no-name background person, it didn't matter. He literally crapped on a girl's face once. I guess it was a shart technically, but that's splitting hairs. Again, Jim is at it again. Nobody ever fought him, including the football players who got this treatment. He wasn't even physically intimidating. I just don't understand. Anyway, apparently he had a thing for crap because he had 2 other crap-related stories that blow my mind to this day. The first was party-related. He got super effed up at a popular girl's party one night and holed up in the bathroom. People were getting pissed because it was a 1-bathroom house, so eventually one of the guys drops his shoulder into the door and busts the lock open. Jim is in the bathtub, standing over a pile of his own crap, self-pleasuring into his crap pile. He effing finished while they were yelling at him, and still no consequences. By this point, you all know as well as I do. Jim is at it again. The second crap story is really sad, actually. One of the autistic girls in our school lived not far from Jim, and he and one of his goons decided one afternoon in the spring of their senior year that it was a good day to F with her. I'm from a fairly rural town, and Jim, his goon, and the unlucky girl all live close to our local cow farm. Jim and his goon get their BB guns from their houses after they get home, break the orange plastic tips off the guns, and go to this girl's house after she gets off the school bus. They then proceed to force her out into the pasture at gunpoint and make her eat a cow patty off the ground. They told the whole school about this themselves, and the collective response was, "Jim's at it again." Nobody even cared to check on the autistic girl, minus her friends, and nobody cared when they complained because she was weird. To be fair, our school didn't tell us that she was autistic or how to deal with people with disabilities. This was the case for a lot of the autistic people in the school. They took so much unnecessary flack for being weird when they literally couldn't help it. We figured it out when people had a notable physical disability or were in the special needs classes, but there is a huge cohort of autistic but not intellectually disabled kids in the normal classes that got crap on constantly. We didn't even know what to look for. We just knew she didn't act normal and it made her a social outcast. We only ever found out that she was autistic because she became a vocal activist for disability awareness after she got out of high school. That last one still F's with me. Out of everyone who didn't deserve it, she was definitely first on the list. This dude was literally immune to consequences because he knew not to F with the 3 or 4 dudes above him in the social hierarchy, and it made everyone else fair game for some unholy reason. Last I heard, he was living in an abandoned house selling cocaine. His mom was a doctor and sold her house, and I told him to go find an apartment. Instead of leaving, he found a way to route power and internet from their neighbor's house and live trap house style in a house with no furniture in the 9 months it took the real estate agents to close on the sale. I don't know what he's up to now, but I'd imagine he's still getting away with heinous crap. I want to believe in karma, but every time I think about this guy, I feel like it's just something we pass along to strangers on Reddit because whatever higher power exists in this universe made this guy above reproach. Not that it should matter, but he was one of the 3 black students in our pretty small rural town. You would think the racism alone would have given him a rough time, but nope, nothing. Not a damn thing ever happened to him. F you, Jim. Story 42. There was this one girl at my school who was more mature than all the girls her age. She dated older guys and wore makeup and dressed differently. Strangely enough, she had a twin sister who was the complete opposite. She played sports, wore big t-shirts and basketball jerseys. My sister hung out with both of them, and she told me whenever the tomboyish sister would dress up for, let's say, prom, the popular sister would talk down on her and hurt her feelings, saying stuff like, "Oh, that's ugly. Why are you wearing that?" Fast forward many years later, the popular sister is extremely overweight and nowhere near her prime, while the sporty sister is blooming. Due to the sports and being active, she has a nice body and is living in the spotlight. A good job, tons of attention in public, clubs and bars. When I seen her, I was amazed and thought originally it was her popular sister. However, the formal popular sister comes in a little later, dressing how she did back then, but as the size of a lineman. Oh, how the tables have turned. Story 43. I guess I was kinda popular in middle school in CN, like 7th grade. Good grades, social, stood up for my fellow students when the teachers were being unreasonable, and tried to push too much homework on us, and fought for more free time and less draconian rulings. I went to a semi-military boarding school. Basically, in a way, the people's man, and people looked up to me to speak up against the teachers, as they don't punish me too hard because my grades were good. Top 5 in the class of 400 people. Then immigrated to US in 8th grade. Didn't speak English, couldn't make friends easily. Lots of people made fun of me because my last name is Pooh. Got bullied in high school where an older guy would punch me in the locker room and I couldn't figure out how to articulate it with English, and too prideful to say a word. Each time I ran into him, he'd either punch or trip me over. It was instant GG, man. I couldn't fight him at all, and he'd always taunt me, "This isn't over." I called a sick guy Hat because I didn't know it was offensive, and he would say F you to my face for 4 years straight, despite me apologizing to him each time after I realized I was wrong. But he gave me the middle finger each time. I thought that's at least a form of pleasantries, so I kept saying hi to him in the hallways. I got bad grades, especially literature and social studies. Got D's for the first time. My biology teacher tried to make me take a sheltered version of biology because I was asking her in class, "What's a jungle?" I was so angry that she thought less of me and outright refused her advice to be placed in sheltered class. Studied hard with the CN English dictionary and ended up with an A in the class and earned her respect. Honestly, none of those were the issue. The problem was I couldn't express all that's on my mind clearly. And in teenage years, people are pretty awkward, and it was early 2000s California high school. I had no friends. There were lots of Asians in my school, but they felt so weird to interact with because I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that they don't speak Chinese. Didn't help that they kept calling me a fob. I was just the odd guy in school. People knew I'm good at math and funny in a weird way, but they'd not be my friends, but more like, let's see what weird crap he'll do, lol. I would spend my free time playing video games and made online friends in StarCraft, clan channels, on Battle.net, and online forums. I kept contacts with my friends in CN and called them every weekend internationally, and they kept asking me if I was going back. I kept asking my parents if I could spend my ninth grade with them in CN, but we were waiting for some visa, meaning I couldn't leave the US. I just cried when I learned that option wasn't for me. Anyways, managed to make some genuine friends in junior's year finally. I remember one time after lunch, this guy picked up my backpack from me as we were going to class. Nobody had done that to me before. That made me choke up as I felt I finally belonged after 3 years of not making any close friends. I would continue to be included in this friend group, and I'm forever grateful for their acceptance in having me. Then I learned how to integrate better. The English language isn't hard. The American culture is. College was great. Everyone's weird and accepting in college anyways. Life is pretty good now, but in a way, I think those years made me a lot more introverted than I would have been. I'm still pretty extrovert, but I could stand spending long times alone without company, no problem. Did it for 3 years anyways. Story 44. So basically, I knew this girl from one of the middle schools I went to, and she randomly showed up at my high school in the middle of the year. She was always popular and completely horrible to me in middle school, and she fit right in with the popular crowd in high school too. The popular crowds in this school, however, never really messed with me. We weren't exactly friends, but me and the ringleader of the whole group were on good terms. He was a really nice guy, and we had a few deep conversations in the past, so we respected each other, even though we weren't exactly socially compatible. After a few weeks of her being at the high school, she started dating the ringleader, as you do. One day, he was late to class, so she had been messing with me all morning. Eventually, I snapped, called her a female dog, and stormed out of the room. He was just coming into the room, so all he heard was me calling her a female dog, so he followed me to the bathroom intending to beat my ass, but I broke down and told him how she treated me at the old school and how she was starting to treat me the same at this school. His entire face softened when he realized what was going on, and he said he would talk to her and gave me a pat on the back. Their relationship didn't last a week once he realized what kind of person she was, and I got to watch her fall into the druggie crowd instead. She sadly didn't make it to graduation due to an overdose. It makes me sad thinking about it because the middle school we went to was a school for troubled kids, and the class we were in for high school was special ed, so she obviously had problems that caused her to act the way she did. However, I can't deny the trauma she caused me in my developmental years. It stuck with me to this day. Story 48. It was our graduation party, and 3 of my friends made a pact to break up, one being the star QB, full ride to a Division I college, with their girlfriends because they were all going to college, and had big plans on booking up with college girls. However, the plan didn't go as planned. The 2 guys instantly hooked up with their ex-girlfriends, and the star QB did break up with his girlfriend earlier that day. He instantly regretted his choice and tried to win her over, but with a keg and a band playing Guns N' Roses. His bravado overtook his higher inflated ego to win her over. The yelling and yelling, which led everyone to stop the music and listen to her berate him about being popular and being better than a high school jock. Well, it shook him to the core, where he paused to say something smart, but in that moment of space and time, someone in the crowd, probably who he tormented all throughout high school, called him an offensive name. The entire house and backyard, in unison, laughed and pointed, even his own boys, where everyone was in tears. This moment where everyone knew he lost everything he had in 4 years and lost it in seconds. His popularity. To be honest, I can't hardly wait how his football careers ends up or even his life down the road. I hope he gets his crap together. Story 49. So this girl, we'll call her Ava, wasn't super popular, but she went from known and liked by most to a new school very, very quickly. Our homecoming court had 6 guys and 6 girls. A huge party got busted the weekend before the dance, and one of the girls, we'll call her Trish, on the court was picked up for possession of alcohol. Trish was dismissed from the homecoming court and couldn't participate in any court activities. Many thought Trish would have been queen. There was another girl, we'll call her Joni, who was surprisingly voted onto the court. She was nice enough, but nobody expected her to get on it. It's a smaller school/town, so most people have known each other for 10 to 12 years at this point, so you think you know who's going to get it. Anyway, this is where Ava comes in. In a weird play of spite, anger, jealousy, or some other unknowable motive, photos were secretly given to the principal of the high school showing Joni clearly drinking at a party. They had timestamps to note that they were recent. The secret person, later found out to be Ava, hoped that they would get Joni kicked off court as well. It worked. The administration decided they had to be consistent about alcohol violations, so the court was down to 4 girls and 6 boys. For a small town, this was pretty big gossip. Once it became clear that Ava produced the pictures, and I still have no idea why, she became singled out by Joni's friends. She was bullied pretty hard and I'm sure intimidated. Joni had some tough friends, so I would have probably been scared too. Ava couldn't take the fear and bullying anymore and transferred mid-semester of her senior year. Cut to 6 months later. Joni and Ava haven't seen each other since the last day of the same school. Ava transferred to the closest school, like 12 miles away. However, our schools use the same college testing site, so the 2 girls ended up being scheduled at the same time in the same classroom for the ACT. When Joni sees Ava, she must have thought it was her only chance for revenge because an all-out brawl breaks out. From what I understand, I was taking my test and could only hear the commotion in the hallway. Joni got a few good shots in before the adults separated them and removed all the perpetrators from the building. Sometimes fate steps in to set the stage for chaos. Yeah, how convenient that they end up in the exact same class at the exact same time to take the ACT. So, if you mess up my life, I get to mess up your face. That's the rule, right? Story 50. There was this one girl in high school that was extremely mean-spirited, but also very funny. I couldn't stand her, but sometimes she would say things in class that had me giggling. Her popular friends also thought it was funny when she bullied people, which I didn't think was funny. Our freshman year algebra teacher was in her very first year of teaching. This girl was absolutely effing relentless on her to the point of bringing her to uncontrollable tears and eventually quitting on the 4th week of the school year and going to teach elementary. That didn't hurt her popularity whatsoever, but come senior year, she got on hard drugs, then broke into her own grandparents' house with her brother and robbed them at gunpoint. Word got around very quickly, and that topped with a few other drug-related misbehaviors made her lose her popularity. Honestly, I was furious it didn't happen freshman year when she made that poor woman cry. Me and 2 other girls were the only ones that stayed after class to try to comfort her. Obviously, that didn't help when there were 20 others gleefully enjoying her pain. That girl was 100% rotten to the core. She's still around town and still on hard drugs. I'm not one to root for revenge, having struggled with drugs myself in the past, but part of me believes it's karma for how absolutely effing cruel she could be to people. Now life is cruel to her. Story 51. My best friend has a condition where he walks in a different way. I'll name him M. His mother told me he never learned to walk until he was 3 or 4, so I felt pity and befriended him after that. We really got along and related to each other. We always defended crap together and struggled. We were the best of friends, but there's this one guy in our school, famous and rich of course, so he was popular AF. We'll call him Josh. He was famous bullying whoever he saw different. You wear neck braces? Bam, you're bullied. You have a birthmark up your nose? Bam, you're bullied. You're autistic? Bam, you're bullied. He was crap, but no one dared to talk to him because he has connections. One day, I taught my friend how to play soccer or football. My teammates laughed on how he struggled, but he got the hang of it, and soon got the respect of my peers. Josh here thought it was a good idea to bully him, so he went up and called my BFF crab legs or penguin feet because of how similar he walks like those animals. He was all alone, yet he had the balls to come up and disrespect us like that. We ganged up on him and took all of his clothes, took a pic of his small pee-pee. No, literally, if I'm estimating it's 4 inches at best. The next school day, one of my mates decided to leak it, and it spread through the school like wildfire. Some of the bullies he had connections with started teasing and bullying him. He was called the Shrimp Wimp Kid for like 1 month before he transferred to another school. And he was also bullied there, so he was homeschooled. This was back in junior year of my high school. Crap was wildin' back then. Story 52. She chased and harassed the unpopular, disinterested in drama, girl for wearing slippers, fur-covered boots. The girl being harassed warned her that if she didn't F off, the popular girl would end up soaking wet and screaming. The popular girl didn't F off. The other girl picked her up and shoved her over the barrier separating the students from a large body of indoor water. I don't remember too much from this point on. I was there supervising some kids, so I had to deal with this situation when I heard about it. But from what I know, lots of people gathered around while the popular girl screamed and flailed, refusing to get out of this water that was about 2 feet deep and saying if she got out, she'd die. All the while, the water was discoloring fast. Someone pulled her out. Turns out she didn't want to get out because she fear crapped herself. Her whole year group saw her herd. From what I hear, she wasn't so popular after that. I was also informed that the girl who did the pushing got zero punishment because although it was a school disco, it wasn't school organized, so there was nothing the school could do. People stopped hating the unpopular girl and left her the F alone. Last I heard, popular girl was twice divorced in her early 20s, and the unpopular girl is studying to be some kind of biologist. Though the last I heard about them was about 7 years ago when I ran into the kid I used to care for, all grown-ish up. For anyone wondering, these people were age 12-ish at the time. Oh, and the indoor body of water was a thing for a kid's entertainment feature. The disco location was a kid's indoor play area during the day, and the water was this little pool where basically floating bumping cars were used. Story 53. I have the opposite story, and it really pissed me off. I was at uni, 22. I was never a popular person, so I related to other not popular people. This one guy was from Uganda and was nice enough, but not your classic popular guy. I was mates with him. Everyone else either ignored him or openly ridiculed him. Anyway, this guy got into an accident. He was driving too fast and he swiped a parked car, killing his passenger. He ran from the scene and jumped on a plane to his home country. Word got out at uni and everyone felt sorry for him. They did a fundraiser for him and sent him a flag signed with everyone's support. I just don't get it, even to this day. I refused to sign. The guy was my friend, and I was mortified by his behavior. It was an accident, sure, but he ran away. What about his friend? What about the family? The way they all changed their tune and became super supportive? It made me sick. Yeah, so I actually agree with OP here. I mean, of course it was an accident. He didn't mean to end his friend's life. But yeah, you ran away like a coward and didn't face the repercussions for what you did. That doesn't need to be celebrated or hailed. You don't need to be consoled. You need to feel the sting of justice. So yeah, I agree. Story 54. Basically, everyone just gradually realized they weren't as cool as they'd been making out to be. As we all grew older, the strange little power hierarchies everyone imposed on each other melted away. Cool kids started hanging out with nerds. Some nerds become cool, and we all just stopped seeing each other as our interests. There was this one guy who clung to his school social status like a drowning man, though. I'll call him Jim. Jim was what you might consider the tip of the cool spear. Always had a girlfriend of equal status. Their drama was, of course, everyone's concern. Jim was your archetypical big lad. In the earlier years, Jim was more of a sideline character, still a diehard prat, but you wouldn't call him a standout from the brood. Eventually, he hit a growth spurt and slowly worked his way up the food chain, probably getting high off his own fumes. Greasy little beggar. My group got the brunt of Jim's power trip. We were nerds, but we kept to ourselves, even stole a few members from the cool kids. Jim enjoyed his time as big lad. You could smell it on him. He had shot up in rank and lorded it over everyone, even his mates. He was one of those guys that you could tell were amazingly smart, intelligent, and who probably had the capacity for decency, but who never put any of these traits to productive use. Over the years, Jim kept it up, being an arse, as was his wont. But as everyone else grew up, he started to lose his rank. We all reach a point in school where you collectively agree to just be decent to each other. As the final exams roll around and you realize that you're on your own after this, pretty much. Jim stuck to the old mentality, making fun of nerds, banging on in class, not letting the teacher speak, and basically buggering up his education. I'll go work with my dad, and I'm not gonna need maths, were his favorite lines. It was a weird period, just before exams finished, where we watched his circle grow smaller and smaller, with more and more of the cool kids moving away, forming their own groups or else joining others. In about the space of several months, he'd gone from top lad to almost a joke. He was that kid who hung around with the younger years and acted cool outside the school gates after school had finished. Jim wasn't as confident as he used to be, came over all cynical and more violent than usual. In the end, it was just him and a few scabby younger-yeared kids hanging out at the back of the school during lunch. He was the coolest guy amongst kids, 4 years his junior. Not sure what he did after school, but I hope he took a look at himself, honestly. Story 55. I was never popular, but I'd like to just add my 2 cents. I'm on the spectrum and hardly ever talk to anyone. My friends, girls who bothered me to be friends with them and didn't leave me alone until I did, would insult me and I'd get upset. They'd tell me that this is what friends do. They joke. They said that they didn't actually mean it and I was taking it too seriously. So I'd joke with them too. They all got mad at me and this was through text. To be honest, I didn't actually know they were mad at me until they started calling me insults that I've never heard in my life. I looked up these insults and they all meant girl who sleeps with multiple men, and I just thought it was a weird insult because I was 12 and had never been with a boy before. They had their neighbors, their friends' their friends, mutual friends, their cousins' friends, almost over 200 strangers in this group chat that they added, all to insult me, I guess? They even got my family friends from school who knew me more than them against me. My mother said it was cyberbullying, but I never saw it as bullying because I was defending myself. Anyways, I finished school alone and didn't talk to anyone after that. However, it didn't stop me from being a target from a gang of boys that loved to throw stones at me whenever we'd walk home and I took the school bus. And the funny thing is, this exact same thing happened when I moved to a completely different country. Maybe it was a schoolboy thing? They found it funny when I'd yell at them to stop, and the erupted laughter I'd hear whenever I spun around to chase them. Not all of them, because there were over 8 of them. I think back to those days and think about what I should have done differently. Just not have said anything or pretend like I didn't feel the stones? Laugh with them? I'm sorry, I know that my story was so definitely not relevant to this post, at all, but I just wanted to share that you can mind your business, not talk to anyone, and still be bullied. I'm about to be 21, hate going outside, and honestly want to spend the rest of my life alone because I just don't like people. I like internet people though, sometimes. Story 56. The group of popular guys had dominated the class and pretty much decided who was cool and who was awkward and weird. This went like this for over a decade, and eventually the rest of the class noticed a few things. Whenever we'd party, we'd all get a bus to take to the city, one that we'd prepay. We'd give our money to one of the popular guys to pay for all of us. At one of these parties, a friend tried to find out how much the bus ride actually was, out of curiosity or maybe suspicion. Turns out, we were giving the popular guy double of what we needed to, and he would split the other half of that money with the other popular kids, a total of 5. The rest of the class started to hate them a bit after that. Eventually, the last first day of school came by. It was our last school year, and the night before, we'd party until the morning and arrive to school all drunk and whatever. We'd all pay a bit for all the drinks for that night, but we'd give it to the same popular guy, for him to buy all the drinks, and then they'd take them to wherever we'd have the party. This time, he did spend all the money on drinks, like planned, but a couple hours before the party, he hung out with the rest of the popular guys. They drank half of all the drinks by themselves, and then arrived at the party drunk and with way less drinks than expected. Some were told not to drink because they didn't pay. A blatant lie. This was the party that was supposed to be for our entire class, as we were finally entering the last year of school, and they were selfish and straight up terrible. After that, we never really hung out with them at all, with the exception of our graduation trip, but even then it was more divided. Needless to say, after the popular guys were ignored by everyone, the entire rest of the class started coming together and forming bigger groups of friends. There was another party where those guys tried to join, but everyone in there gave them the most uncomfortable and unwelcoming glance to make them understand that they didn't want them there. They left. Story 58. I had a guy that would try to get his yes men to make fun of me with him. Let's just call this guy Tom. I changed schools 2 years later just because my 3 best friends did, and I was just following suit. The year prior to me changing schools, Tom got his pants pulled down in the gym, in front of the whole school. I mean, it must have been small because he changed schools and ended up at the different one I was going to. Then I was driving my pickup through the school parking lot and saw someone parked like a real jackass, taking up 3 spots in a big truck. You know, the usual. So I looked at my homeboys in the truck and was like, I'm gonna fix that guy's parking job. And I hooked my tow rope to it and tried to pull it into one lane. It broke the rope. I got about 7 texts from people that something like, hey, what are you doing to Tom's truck? He said he saw you hook something up to it. It was Tom's daddy's truck, so I had no idea it was his. Go figure. I just didn't like how whoever owned it was parked. It was just funny how Tom played so tough, but yet he saw me effing with his dad's crap with his own eyes and had to have other people ask me about it. Then, the next day, he went running his mouth to the whole school about how my gas Chevy couldn't move his dad's Cummins. Should have brought tow chains, I know. Had a lot of people I didn't even know be like, I'm so proud of you for that though. Good times. Everyone saw through Tom's bullcrap. Story 59. I'm not sure someone has already posted the I was the popular kid post, but so will I. I rode motocross as a kid and was quite good. but I was from an area that was very team sport oriented and had no motocross community. This worked in my favor, however, as it made me seem exotic and mature and gave the illusion of being wealthy because motocross can be pretty expensive, unless it's largely subsidized by sponsorships like in my case. All of the girls wanted to date me because I had a certain value based on rarity and was just cute enough. All the guys wanted to be my friend because I had an awesome garage and backyard. Both wanted to be around me because I traveled a lot, and they wanted to tag along, and I gave away lots of cool, free crap that my sponsors gave me. One unfortunate day, I shattered my femur into pieces up close to the hip in the most benign, softest crash, and I was effectively done with motocross. I tried to come back after I was cleared by the doctor, but it was still incredibly painful, and I was nearly a year behind in development and training. I was done. My popularity persisted through my injury, but tapered off very quickly when I shut the motocross operation down. What was very surprising and completely unexpected was that people didn't just abandon me, they basically turned against me. The same girls that used to flirt with me called me weird and spread rumors about me. Guys that always wanted to come over and play with my toys began to call me names and make fun of my limp. Luckily, I was very mature for my age and was able to kind of view it all from 40,000 feet and recognize what was going on and know that better days were ahead. And they were. I learned a very hard but very important life lesson at a young age, and it's made me a better, more compassionate person. Story 60. He and she made up the it couple for a couple years. He was fairly attractive from my point of view. Kind, respected, and respectful. He felt more like a man of the people than a popular kid, and was fairly intelligent, and we had been friends since 5th grade. She was smoking hot and new, was also intelligent, but also ignorant, if that makes sense, and was very outspoken about her opinions, even if she was wrong. They started dating in freshman year after her last relationship ended. At first, they're a great couple. He seems happier than ever and enjoys being with her, and then things start to change in sophomore year, at least publicly. They start fighting a little more, over the smallest possible things. Then she starts to tell him that he needs to stop hanging out with us, and then she starts calling him stupid and ugly, and that she loved him but he needed to make some changes to his appearance. Then in junior year, she starts throwing in some slaps when they're fighting, and this whole time he's just gritting his teeth and beating it. Someone reports her to the school for bullying him, and she goes into the counselor's office, but nothing is done. She's let off with a warning. At lunch, the next day, she starts yelling at him and hitting him on the head, yelling, "You don't love me, stupid! I thought you loved me! Why would you report me for bullying you? I love you!" And he'd had enough. He said, "No, I hate you." Easy mistake to make for simpletons. And she effing loses it, starts yelling incoherently, then shoved him. He told her not to touch him because she was a stranger to him now, and then she coherently yells, "F you, twat!" and full hand, full swing smacks him in the face as hard as she can, breaking the proverbial camel's back with her movie-level smack. So he smacks her back as hard as he can. Full hand, full swing again. Now, but this point tons of people are watching this spectacle, this TMZ level drama, and are upset he hit her back. Her friends step up to yell at him. Her white knights step forward to fight him, and she's sobbing at the top of her lungs. It's at this moment that the teacher supervising lunch decide to step in now that a small lynch mob has formed for him to take him to the vice principal's office. He got suspended for a week for defending himself against his toxic effing abuser, and she had in-school suspension for a day and was together with a new guy in 2 weeks. And he became an outcast whose only friends were me and 3 others, but he moved to Iowa and she moved to the desert. We lost contact with him about 4 months ago and just haven't talked since. I hope he's going okay. So, first of all, I just want to preface by saying I don't condone domestic violence in any form or fashion, whether that's a man hitting a woman hitting a man, but in this particular case, my goodness, she's beating the crap out of him, and heaven forbid he do anything in retaliation and he's the bad guy because a man shouldn't hit a woman, which I agree with, but this girl was absolutely asking for it. Come on, that's ridiculous. Story 61. Apparently I did? When I moved to my new school in 8th grade, I obviously didn't have any friends, and the school didn't have that many new kids in it, so everyone wanted to meet me. And by everyone, I mean first grades came up to me and asked me if I was the new kid. Everyone. Anyway, I met a bunch of the popular kids who told me about how popular they are and who they don't like, aka who to bully, and who to hang out with and who not to hang out with, and how amazingly rich their parents were, blah blah blah. I was not good at making friends, so I only really talked to people who talked to me, and one time I started talking with the kid that everyone in my grade made fun of. He had a tough home situation, which is something those rich kids could never understand, so they made fun of him for it instead. And I found out that he was actually a really cool guy and we became friends. From then on, I started standing up for him and calling others on their bullcrap and basically revealed that the popular kid were just insensitive bullies. Everyone apparently started not liking them and I became popular? The only reason I know about this is because I was talking with my best friend a couple years later and I said I was glad that people became nicer at our school by the end of it, and she flat out told me it was because of me. I asked what she meant and she said that I called out the popular crowd on their BS. I couldn't be bullied, which I did not register was happening. I didn't care about rumors, which I also did not know were being spread about me, and I stood up for anyone who was being bullied, so the populars disbanded and I became popular for being nice, and blatantly obvious to mean stuff happening to me, which everyone else took as me not caring about that stuff. Story 62. Drunken car crash with several of them severely injured. One girl was hospitalized for weeks. One who wound up with 2 leg casts and 1 arm. The girl I knew the most, Ursula, and not really, we just were teacher assistants together, had just a broken arm, but you could tell she was haunted by it and really just changed her world overnight. I think she had been in the passenger seat, and it was her who grabbed the wheel and stopped them hitting the other car and crashing worse. The other car was also drunken teens, and they drove off. They were lucky not to die and that no one else was hurt. I'd say of them, the only girl I knew and the only one who had surgery/partial body cast really changed a lot after. The others, despite being really banged up/broken arms and ankles, kept doing crap and just really irresponsible and mean. My impression was that Ursula wasn't that wasted and trying to save everyone else, and the response and nonchalant nature of her friends about it really effed her up. I don't know what she's doing now, but it was a very small town, so everyone effing knew, and everyone knew which boy's house they'd been drinking at, etc. Story 63. Popular guy in my middle school. I was in 6th grade at the time. This douchebag was in 8th and held back twice from what I heard. Once in 1st grade and a second time in 5th grade. Was popular for his tall height and strength. All around evil Chad. He always bullied the 7th graders with the rare exception of a 6th or 8th grader. Not sure why. Well, one day a group of 7th graders had enough of his crap and ganged up on him in the restrooms. A couple dozen boys walk in on this display of brutality at different times and either stayed to watch, joined the one-sided beatdown, or just noped out of there. They only stopped kicking his ass when the bell rang. I remember seeing him stumble out of the restrooms. His nose had been twisted a good 60 degrees. One eye was swollen shut. Left side of his face was all purplish, and blood was freely running down his nose. Man looked 3/4 dead with how he shambled out of there. I turned around and kept walking before he or any of the supervisors saw me. Last thing I wanted was to feel guilty and or compelled to help the douchebag. From what I remember, he was sent to the hospital for broken ribs, dislocated arm, no surgery, etc. So that's what his respectable younger cousin told me. Only 3 of the boys who kicked his ass were caught, and that's because they were caught bragging about it. I did recognize a few of the boys who most likely were beating the douchebag's ass, but I just kept my mouth shut with respect for them cutting him down to size. He soon returned after a week or 2, and he became a quiet kid. 8th and 7th graders started bullying him. I don't know if he ever managed to recover from having his pride shattered since I moved to a new home sometime in February, but I personally doubt it. The only ounce of pity I felt for him was the fact that he was ganged up on. Story 64. In high school, there was this very popular girl who was in JROTC with me. She wasn't a mean person, nor did she bully anyone. All around, she was pretty nice and fun to hang around with. However, she did something that earned her a nickname of a very famous person. Here's how it goes. The JROTC went on this trip to compete in an orienteering competition that was taking place out of town in San Antonio, Texas, to be exact. The competition went well, but it's what happened afterwards is where the whole ordeal took place. After the competition, we went to the Riverwalk Mall in downtown San Antonio. Still being high schoolers, we were given rules to follow, obviously. No vandalizing, no stealing, no leaving the group, etc., etc. Typical field trip stuff. Anyway, we spent about an hour there before we returned to the bus so we could go home. As they were taking roll call on board the bus, one person was missing. We wound up staying an extra 3 hours waiting on her. Needless to say, our instructors were furious and hella worried something terrible happened to her, since she sorta just vanished and nobody seemed to notice. 3 hours go by and our bus is approached by mall security. He pulls our instructor back into the mall to talk. When they're done talking, the instructor is beet red in the face and you can tell he's not embarrassed. He's pissed. We leave without her. Her belongings are still in the bus, yet we just leave without her. We're all worried now, and there was nothing we could do to get our instructor to tell us what was going on. Legally, I don't think he was allowed to say anything, but even if he was allowed, it was best he didn't. We get home, a whole 160 miles away. A week passes and we still don't know a thing about her, or if she's even made it back home. Only thing we were told was she's fine, but that was it. 2 weeks pass, and she finally returns to school with us. But she's no longer in the JROTC and is doing a buttload of detention and community service after school. She's extremely quiet and doesn't talk to anyone except for a handful of her very close friends, who end up spilling the beans not long afterwards. We find out that while we were at the Riverwalk Mall, she was caught in a Victoria's Secret store, stuffing loads of lingerie into her backpack. They found so much stuff, it was well into the hundreds or even thousands of dollars worth. When they approached her, apparently she ran and hid somewhere until she thought it was safe to make a beeline for the bus. She was caught, obviously, since security was looking for her and waiting at every possible exit. Once they caught her, they took her to the loss prevention office where she was held for a very long time. Her parents were called and had to drive all the way out there to pick her up. She was let go, obviously, since she was a minor, but she was definitely punished for what she did. To make matters worse, not only was she banned from the Riverwalk Mall, but our whole JROTC group was as well. It was hella embarrassing to find out that one person's actions had such an effect on everyone else around her, even though we'd done nothing wrong. Since then, students started calling her by the nickname Winona Ryder, and it followed her all the way to graduation. This was back in 2008, and I still remember it like it was yesterday. Story 65. This guy wasn't overly popular, but he hung out with the cool but wild kids. Knocked up a fairly sweet popular girl from another clique their sophomore year. Now, that wouldn't have dropped his popularity, except he quickly became a deadbeat who went to parties instead of helping with his newborn. In fact, he basically left them after the baby was born and had no contact, refused to pay for anything or help her. Thankfully, her parents didn't throw her out, and I think even his parents helped her out. Nobody in school would even talk to him after that. What's even worse, for her, is that they were in the same year and had many classes together. Tiny rural town. Another I can think of was a few years older than me. We had a death in our school. A senior was at the quarry with his freshman brother. Well, the quarry is actually a swimming hole that used to be a quarry till they hit an underwater spring and it filled with water. We'd recently had a solid rain, so there was also a waterfall going into the quarry from the top cliffs, making the cliff diving harder due to low visibility of the bottom. They were jumping off the waterfall when the senior went down and didn't come up. His brother went in to rescue him and realized his brother's foot was stuck. He held his unresponsive brother's head above the water until rescue arrived, trying to block the water from the falls. What nobody realized until paramedics got there was that his brother's neck had snapped from the fall. He was dead the whole time. Some unpopular dumbass opened his mouth and insulted that kid's brother in front of him at lunch. Kid grabbed a plastic knife and stabbed the dumbass. When dumbass made it back to school, nobody would go near him with a 10-foot pole. Unfortunately, the kid got expelled and maybe charged, so nobody saw him again. Story 66. Schools, not that have been to school with her after preschool, but from others I heard she lost her popularity. She was quite popular in preschool. Rich parents, not that bad looking, attitude, and her slaves, basically the other 4 girls running around her. We only had 6 girls in our preschool year. And somehow she was always able to shut me out of projects and eventually even birthday parties, because I didn't come from that wealthy of a family, and didn't fit into the stereotypical girly type like them. I didn't mind and had my own group of friends, which were like most guys, even the popular ones. But after preschool, we transferred to different high/middle schools. I went as the only one to a different one, and my best friends moved to another city. So the 3 of us were the only ones left out. But I was in touch with a few of friends, and I found out my niece was in the class with her. Through them, I heard she quietly lost her popularity. Why? Because she kept bragging about how smart she was, that she had money, she was so popular at her old school, but her 4 slaves weren't in her class and placed at a different location. This high school had 2 locations due to overpopulation, so she was basically alone and didn't have friends to back up. She made an attitude and not lots of people liked it, and therefore she lost her popularity. Also, with stuff my niece told that she heard of me. So yeah, she took a different path and is struggling to keep up with everything, because she's been tough on how to do certain things, because her parents always did it for her, and she didn't have knowledge about. The only sad thing is that her parents always pushed her. She wasn't able to do things how she wanted, so a part of her attitude came from her parents. Story 67. This is early 2010s. I was decently popular for the first few months of high school. New kid in a smaller community, but a guy much older than me asked to be my boyfriend and I said yes. I lost my virginity within 2 weeks and my period was late, so I asked if he could help me get a pregnancy test. He fell off the face of the earth. I didn't even see him in the hallways. A week went by and I decided to tell my mom what happened. Most humiliating moment of my life by far. She got me a test and gave me a serious scolding, and when the test came back negative, I took a photo of it and sent it to my missing boyfriend. He continued to ghost me until I told him I was done playing his game and broke up with him. Then he threatened to unalive himself if I left. Sitting in lunch the next week with a group of athletes, a very tall boy named John stole my phone. He knew my passcode after sitting next to me in science class and spying, opened my phone and flipped immediately to my text with my ex-boyfriend, found the photo of the negative pregnancy test, and used my phone to text the picture to himself and then spread it around the school. And that's the story of how I became the unpopular school slut. Story 68. I wasn't popular or anything, but I was a really dumb freshman in high school. I came from a small private school with only a few of my friends going to the public school I was attending, so I struggled to fit in. My humor back in the day was basically me acting totally stupid so I could get laughs from others. I remember I saw some guy flipping people off as they walked into our English building. Me, being the kid who wanted to fit in, joined him and started doing the same to every person who came in. As you'd expect, the wrong person came in and saw me flipping him off. He ran up the stairs and started to talk crap directly to my face. By now, a massive circle had formed around me of onlookers. I don't remember what he said, but afterwards he left, and I muttered, "Your hair looks like a bird's nest." Bad move. His friend yelled out to him what I said, and he ran back up, called me names, spat in my face, literally, and hauled ass out of there. I stopped being stupid and cringy after committing social self-unaliving. Story 69. He got super into anime. It's fine if you're into anime, but he made it his whole personality. Painting his nails black because of Kaneki, making himself a Tokyo Ghoul mask, trying to speak Japanese to attempt to look cool, blasting anime openings in the halls. That, and he fell head over heels in love with my brother. He had never shown any signs of homosexuality, but he was suddenly super into my brother, but I just figured that maybe he was closeted for a while. My brother and him started dating a little while later since my brother also liked him. So all of this takes a pretty big toll on his social standing at the school, obviously, but what really did him in was him realizing he wasn't gay, and he was really just curious. So he started hanging out with this one girl, and more to the point, that he was hanging out with her more than his own boyfriend. So I can tell what's up. My friends can tell what's up. My brother's friends can tell what's up. And I think my brother could tell what was up, even though he tried to deny it. Well, you guessed it, he dumps my bro for the girl and blames it on me for being too annoying. For context, I stopped them from kissing before they had started dating, since my bro was dating someone at the time. But something unexpected happens when he asked out the girl he's hanging out with. Turns out, she was a lesbian. So now he went from 2 love interests to none. His popularity continued to decline as time went on, and he's now considered the weird kid. I'm glad. Story 70. So it all started when the 16-year-old homeschooled girl and her zoologist parents returned to the United States after a 12-year research trip in Africa, settling in Evanston, Illinois. On her first day ever of attending a school, North Shore High School, the girl, who I'll call Katie, attempts to make new friends, but to no avail. The next day, she meets and befriends Janice and Damien. They educate Katie on the school's various cliques and warn her to avoid the most popular and infamous one, the Plastics, which is led by beautiful and manipulative Queen Bee Regina and includes the insecure but rich Gretchen and sweet but dim-witted Karen. The Plastics take an interest in Katie after defending her against a sexist classmate and invite her to sit with them at lunch. After learning of the invitation, Janice asks Katie to befriend them and to spy on them for her. Katie soon learns about the Burn Book, a scrapbook the plastics have made that's filled with horrible rumors, secrets, and insults about the other girls and some teachers at school. Using the book, Janice devises a plan to get back at Regina, but Katie is reluctant, thinking Regina is a good friend. Katie becomes attracted to Regina's ex-boyfriend, Aaron, and purposely fails math, a subject she's gifted at, in order to have an excuse to talk to him. Regina finds out about Katie's crush on Aaron and jealously steals him back at a Halloween party by kissing him in front of Katie. This spurs Katie to fully commit to Janice's plan to cut off Regina's resources, invoking breaking Regina and Aaron up, tricking Regina into eating Swedish nutrition bars that actually make her gain weight, and turning Regina's fellow plastics against her. In the process, Katie unwittingly remakes herself in Regina's image, becoming spiteful and superficial, and abandons Janice and Damien. When Regina is finally made aware of Katie's treachery, she retaliates by spreading the contents of the burn book all over the school, quickly inciting massive socially motivated brawls throughout the halls. To avoid suspicion, Regina inserts a fake libel of herself in the book in order to blame Katie, Gretchen, and Karen, the only female juniors not mentioned in the book. Karen convinces the school's principal, Ron Duvall, that they did not write the book, who soon quells the fighting and gathers all the junior girls in the gymnasium. Math teacher Miss Norbury makes the girls face the ways they all treat each other and apologize to each other and the teachers. The plan sees success as friendships are rekindled. When Janice's turn comes, she defies Norbury, confessing her plan to destroy Regina with Katie's help and openly mocking Regina, drawing praise from other students Regina bullied. Pursued by an apologetic Katie, Regina storms out of the school and is struck by a school bus, breaking her spine, and rumors spread that Katie pushed Regina in front of the bus. Shunned by her peers and grounded by her parents, Katie takes full blame for the burn book. After making amends with Regina, she joins the mathletes in the state championship finals to make up for the math test she failed. Katie answers the tiebreaker correctly, and they win the championship for the school. At the spring fling dance, Regina's new boyfriend, Shane, is elected king, while Katie is elected queen. On stage, Katie declares that all of her classmates are wonderful in their own way, snaps her plastic tiara, and distributes the pieces to other girls in the crowd. She then reconciles with Janice, Damien, and Aaron, and reaches a truce with the plastics. The plastics disband over summer vacation. Regina joins the lacrosse team to deal with her anger. Karen becomes the school weather reporter, and Gretchen joins the Cool Asians clique. Aaron graduates from high school and attends Northwestern University while starting a relationship with Katie, who visits him during the weekends. Janice begins dating mathlete Kevin Napor, whom she initially disliked. As Katie reflects on the social peace that has taken over North Shore High, a group of new junior plastics has arisen, and Katie imagines them being hit by a bus like Regina was. Story 71. She wasn't popular, more of somewhere in the middle of the pack, but her stunt with the money her class had raised for charity. Anyway, back in the early 90s, our high school set up an advisor program. Each teacher would meet before or after lunch with 10 to 12 students for the whole year, 30 minutes per day. Some did athletic things like frisbee golf in the school's front lawn. Others went camping, planning a weekend and going camping with an appropriate number of chaperones. Most of the groups just shot the crap, as the average age of the teachers was 23-ish, so they weren't much older than we were. The school district was made up of one very small but affluent, rich as F, town and two even smaller but much poorer towns. Some kids went home to mansions, others went home to apartments with parents living paycheck to paycheck. One advisory group ran a fundraiser for a charity. No idea what it was, don't remember, but they ran it for the entire year with bake sales, car washes, the normal fundraising stuff. At the end of the year, they had gathered several $1,000s and were all set to make the donation when the money went missing. Everything was gone. Turns out one person had their locker broken into, and they had been trusted with the cash. On a side note, no idea why the F they hadn't put it into a savings account, but whatever. The advisory group spent the last few weeks of the year going around the school, to each of the other advisory groups, begging the person who took the money to come forward. One of the groups had rich parents who took pity on their offspring's plight, but they just donated an amount equaling the lost amount, so the charity didn't lose out. Ultimately, the principal had been waiting for the perpetrator to out herself. The person who stole the cash didn't count on one thing. The school was brand new. Brand spanking new. Ours was the first class to complete all 4 years. State-of-the-art everything, including camera systems. School administration knew exactly who had taken the money by breaking into her own locker late one night during a school function, a band concert if memory serves. They watched the girl go around the school, begging for the party who did the deed to step forward. Had she come forward, she would have gotten a slap on the wrist. I think the most shocked were her parents, who were shown the footage and brought into the fold of those who actually knew who did it. Principal set a hard limit on when the thief could come forward without serious repercussions. That day came and no one stepped forward. The thief, who has a very original, not to mention unfortunate for a child to grow up with, name I won't be outing here, was confronted by the administration with the security footage. Aside from the social stigma she picked up from stealing from her classmates and the anger towards her felt by everyone she begged to come forward for the crime she herself committed, she was held back a year for gross misconduct. Her parents were happy she wasn't expelled outright. She spent her 5th and last year in high school friendless and ostracized. You'd think she would have graduated and left town, but I was visiting the parents one year, about 15 years ago, and stopped by the video rental place. Might have been longer than 15 years ago, come to think of it. Anyway, there she is, renting some family movies with her husband and 2 kids. She'd gotten her diploma, met a guy, and started a family. Same town. Everyone knew what she'd done. Couldn't keep a job for anything. Word would reach her new employer, and there'd be a reason to let her go. I guess her karma is still following her. Story 73. Hey, this happened to me when I was 10. I had been bullied for years, and one day I had a growth spurt and decided to start sticking up for myself. I quickly became pretty popular in my neighborhood, and basking in this newfound glory, I was determined to meet and make friends with everyone within walking distance of my house. Took a few of my newer friends to meet this new kid, and when we got there, they were all like, "Oh, we know Franklin," but they suddenly didn't want to see him and wouldn't say why. I said I'd go alone, and they relented and came with. Cut to half an hour later, and we're hanging on Franklin's porch, and he's an absolute and utter a-hole. Expects everyone to be his servant and do whatever he wants. I'd had enough of it and decide to leave, and Franklin blocks my way and won't let me pass. He's being a real ass about it and dares me to push him out of the way. He's about half a foot taller than me, so I decide it's fair to be physical, and I do exactly what he asked. He's much, much lighter than I realize and goes flying off the porch. It was crazy. He just sailed off through the air like paper in the wind, and I'm looking down at my hands like, the F did I just do? My friends rush over to him in a blur to help him up, and he's just bawling his eyes out. They were all scowling at me like I just murdered Franklin. Turns out, Franklin had bone cancer. Oops, I effed up. I was forever known as the kid who beat up the kid with bone cancer. Story 74. She was a friend of mine and hooked up with a mutual friend at a small party at my house. I even gave her a ride home afterwards. She didn't realize that her shirt was on inside out, so when her dad asked what happened, she panicked and said we gave her orange juice, it tasted weird, and she didn't remember anything after that. Dad flips out and calls the cops. She lied to the cops and told them the same story. Because it happened at my house, there is a SA investigation filed against me. Our mutual friend hung out with the pretty popular crowd, and they made sure that the word got out to protect my friend and I. She never came clean with her parents/cops. She never apologized to anybody. She lost every one of her friends. She may as well have been radioactive for her last year and a half of high school. Fun fact, the police requested her to go to the hospital to get a SA exam and drug test. She kept the lie up all the way through this. The toxicology report eventually came back all negative with a blood alcohol content of 0.018. Story 75. Popular football star and school bully. I went to high school with, got into a fight with another guy one day. I guess it didn't go over well for Mr. Popular because later that night he went out with friends, got drunk, and decided he was going to go over to the other guy's house at night and fight him again. I don't remember all the details, but it was late enough that everyone in the house was asleep, so Mr. Popular decided to break in and fight the other guy inside. He goes to his bedroom and continues on with what was described as a massive beating of this poor guy in his sleep. Turns out, in his drunken stupor, he actually broke into the neighbor's house next door and beat the hell out of a 10-year-old kid. And I can't be sure, but I think the kid was mentally challenged, and his father was a beloved teacher at the same high school. Mr. Popular wasn't so hot after that. You'd think Mr. Popular would have gone to jail, but nope. It was covered up and he was even allowed to continue playing football. Gotta love Texas football. Story 76. In high school, this kid had super wealthy parents that were always traveling and not involved much in his life. It was the perfect storm for him to be popular because his parents would often leave town and buy a bunch of booze so he could throw parties. I'm not kidding. 15 years old, and the parties at his borderline mansion were nuts. His parents just turned a blind eye because they wanted him to be popular. The day he turned 16, they bought him a brand spanking new SRT8 Jeep Grand Cherokee, super performance luxury SUV for those that aren't car people. That same weekend, he was driving drunk and ran it through a ditch, a rancher's fence, and right into a barn and passed out. Totaled it and got arrested for DUI. His parents tried to fight it, but there was no winning that one in court. He definitely lost some respect from a lot of our school for being a spoiled idiot, but his parents doubled down and let him keep throwing parties while he was on probation, so he kept a lot of friends. 1 year later, his probation was up and he was able to get his license back. Idiotic parents bought him another brand new SRT8 Grand Cherokee. Wish I was making this crap up. People got very salty about it because he was flaunting about how awesome his new car was. Basically got disowned by everyone. He started getting in trouble a lot at school because he was acting out for attention. He totaled the second SRT8 a couple months later while drunk. Again, not really sure how it all ended for him. I was a year older and left town for college, but he was definitely the laughingstock of the school at that point. Honestly, hope life ended up working out for him, although I imagine he's just going to end up a trust fund baby. Story 77. I know it might sound like I'm saying bullcrap, but when I was in 7th grade, a girl who we knew had something wrong, in fact we used to call her the Yandeer, passed by me and she took out a knife. I was obviously scared as hell, since my greatest fear is death, but I said to myself, okay, I'll do this, and I quickly shook her hand to make the knife fall off, and smiling, I was considered kind of a psycho myself, I grabbed it. At the same time, I made her fall off and I said very loudly, "Someone call the teacher, please." The teacher arrived and we found out that she not only had a knife, but also a list of people to kill. Honestly, I wasn't enjoying this victory at all because I was about to have a heart attack. I was so scared, I thought it would be better to not come to school for the next few days, but obviously my mother forced me to go to school anyways. Now, I guess you're asking yourself why I'm telling all of this. I'm saying this because the classic popular kid, as we knew later, had crapped his pants. He clearly became less popular after that. As I said, I was considered a sort of psycho, so no one really complimented me because of that. Story 79. There is a senior guy who gained his popularity by being a cool guy. Chad, if you may. All dominant and alpha and crap. Drugs, booze, smokes, etc. He was a complete dick, bullying and threatening us, little kids, by beating, blackmailing, stealing our money, thrashing our belongings, you name it, he did it. There is a rumor that he killed/seriously injured his own grandma, but I don't know if it's true or not. The worst thing is no one could catch him doing it all, because his little victims were so afraid of him, they kept silent and told no one about the whole thing. It continued for a couple years, until one day my classmate came in the class in tears and seemingly very scared. He was from a poor family that didn't give him much, but he was really calm, interesting, and nice little guy. So it was really strange for him to be in such a mood. He reached in his backpack and took a considerable amount of money out of one of the pockets. When our teacher noticed him, she asked what's going on, and he bursted out crying, saying that some teacher told him that he's going to stab him if he won't give him money or something like that. When our teacher heard it, she wasn't really surprised, but was really happy to catch that son of a ditch that terrorized basically the whole school. She took him to the principal's office, after which he went straight to the party van and, finally, in jail. I don't know where he is now, and I don't really want to find out, but after he was gone to the Blue Disco party, our school corridors became a much safer place to be. My classmate did pretty well, by the way. Sorry for my English, and best wishes from Mother Russia. Story 80. I was fat in 6th grade, but I was still popular, and most people knew that I was fat, but it was because of me overeating as a little kid, but I was trying to lose some weight, and everyone was really supportive about it. But in the middle of 6th grade, this new kid came to my school. He never really talked to me, and he was pretty popular. So school gets out for the year and everything went well, but all nice things die. When we came back to school for the year in September, I had lost lots of weight and most of my teachers/friends were proud. Now over the summer, that new kid had become super popular and was dating one of the popular girls, I think. So it was about a week into school and the kid sees me walk past and he throws a effing sandwich at me and says, "Eat it, fatso." And I say, "Okay, wow, I didn't know kids actually bully people here." And he says it again, so I pick it up, spit in it, and throw it back at him, and he gets red in the face and tries to punch me. Now, over the summer, he took karate. He wasn't good though. So he kicks me, and as soon as that happens, like effing 7 kids start to beat the living crap out of him, and then he started to cry. Story 81. 2 stories come to mind. First one was one of the popular girls got knocked up by a 17-year-old from 6th form. I don't remember much of how Britain's education works, cause I only lived there for 5 years, but 6th form, I believe, is like school before you go to uni. This happened when I moved schools across the continent, work-related. My friend told me after I noticed her posting pictures of herself with her friends holding signs saying, "Insert pregnant girl's name" and "aunt/uncle," insert name. I actually had a debate with her for a few years prior on opinions on abortions, and she was against it 100%. My reasoning was that once you had an unplanned child, your life is over, unless you get an abortion. You can't enjoy the things your buddies do because you have a child to watch. Then I heard rumors she was in a partially abusive household, got bullied by some kids I used to hang out with. Last I heard, she had a boy who's 2. IDK what she's doing now. Second story. There was this one kid, wasn't considered popular, but was well liked by pretty much everyone. Nice to everyone, smart, good sense of humor. Well, apparently, he had gotten the nudes of about 300 girls on his phone. He got caught when he asked a freshman, as a junior/senior, to send him some and she reported him. Pretty sure the police were involved. Teachers inspected his phone. Don't know what happened to him. It surprised everybody from what I heard. No offense to him, but he wasn't exactly the attractive type, so his kindness is what got him recognition. Story 82. At my school for the last day of term, a protest for women's rights was held. Originally, X and I weren't going to go, since we felt like our education was important and that it was the wrong time for the protest. I go to the first lesson to be greeted by X and Y. We were the only people who turned up to dance. Our teacher, Miss Z, knew about the protest. Everyone did. It had been circulating about Instagram for a day or two. The sad irony of attending the dance was that no work was actually done. We all, including Z, were talking about women's rights, the protest, and how many people we thought went to just bunk off lessons instead of actually supporting the cause. After several video calls and watching Instagram lives, me, X, and Y decided that if no one will be in lessons, then we should just go protest, and there is another reason which I shall get onto later. So, during the transition period between lessons, us 3 go to an exit only to be greeted by a teacher. We go to the second one, blocked again. Then we notice everyone was going around, out the school premises and onto the field, where the protest was being held. At the protest, everyone was sitting. Well, the people who were actually protesting were. And were listening to the stories and speeches given by people going into the middle. After a lot of talks, several of which I did, X decides to go up with a friend, and I know exactly what they're going to do. TWBTW. X gets up with a friend and goes in the middle and exposes in front of a lot of presumed feminists that one of the guys, who stranded the protest just to bunk and spite it, had essayed her on her first day in the school. She was a new kid. Instantly, everyone gives death stares at the group. All it took was for X to go up and the group of boys' fate was sealed. They're now outcasts. Story 83. I know this guy who was pretty well known in my sophomore year of high school. Let's call this guy John. One day, me and a couple of my friends went to go spark at my buddy's house. At the time, we considered John as a friend, so we invited him too. We got high, chilled for a bit, and went home. Later that day, my friend's mom noticed that 2 of her Michael Kors watches were missing, so my buddy asked if they knew what happened. The next day, John posted on his IG that he bought a new MK watch, which looks exactly like the one my friend's mom has. It didn't take long for everyone to know that John stole the watches. John would just try and blatantly lie and say that he bought the watches, so my friends were done with the BS and were planning on jumping him and taking the watches. John could tell that he was being targeted by us, so he snitched to the assistant principal. My friend also had a talk with her and informed her that John stole two $300 watches. After that, the school clearly didn't know what to do because John would never admit to stealing the watches. My friend's mom was disappointed on how the school was handling the situation, so police had to get involved and confiscate the watches. After that whole ordeal, all of John's friends quit being friends with him, and it wasn't until our junior year where I saw John having some friends with some freshmen who didn't know what happened the previous year. I don't feel bad for John at all. Story 84. Most popular people I know weren't some high school cliche jerkwad, but were generally just attractive, smart people who had rich families. 9 out of 10 of the preppy, popular crowd in my town were also Christian, since I lived in the Bible Belt. There were 1 or 2 exceptions. F you, Wes. Of course. That being said, anything gay. Remember, most of them are Christian. Even so, I was openly bisexual in high school, and I was never mistreated by anyone in that crowd. But I remember some group of girls whose ex-boyfriend made out with a guy as an experiment, and whether I thought that made him gay. I wasted a few minutes trying to give some lecture on Kinsey, before they concluded that it probably means he was gay. Poor guy never recovered, really. I was used to being a bit of an outsider, but nobody treated him the same after that, and it effed with him a lot, it seemed. Story 85. There was this popular kid at school, black belt in karate, good at rugby, came from a highly respected family who ran the local gym in a small rural town. He even beat me up once for fighting a Maori kid in school. I came to the rescue of my friend who was half the size of the other kid, so that made me a target. Anywho, I digress. Shortly after this, he and his cousin broke into the home of some local prominent Chinese market gardeners. During the burglary, they beat the crap out of the occupants and SA'd an elderly woman living there. They drove a victim down to an ATM to try and steal money from their bank account. They were caught because one of the fathers recognized an axe used in the robbery. He beat the crap out of his kid and turned him into the police. Not only did they lose their popularity, they got to spend 4 years free board and rent at Her Majesty's pleasure. Later in life, I became a cop and did a little research on the dude on the National Intelligence Database to see what had become of this fine specimen. I learned that after he got out, he enjoyed beating his girlfriend, for which he got to spend more time behind bars on numerous occasions. Definitely a bit of a schadenfreude when seeing his mugshot on the monitor. Story 86. I went from really unpopular to weirdly popular by leaving school. In the summer between my junior year and what would have been senior year, I started university on a full scholarship. I took the 2 summer semesters for credit, and part of the deal was having the option of returning to high school or continuing in the fall semester with a couple of courses required to satisfy the state requirements for graduation. I didn't give the idea of going back to high school a set thought. That was decades ago. To this very day, I regularly encounter people who have completely false memories of me in high school, specific parties, which I was present for a few of the more memorable events, and all kinds of pretty detailed situations that could not possibly have included me. One person has a whole story of me on a ski trip. They have a picture of me sitting in the back of their van playing my guitar. It's definitely me, but I think it's from some other road trip that happened later when those kids matriculated normally and ended up being freshmen at my college where I'd already gotten way ahead of the normal wave. A few of those kids kissed up to me a bit because I had my own place in the college town, Austin, Texas in the 1980s, and they wanted to take advantage. And for better and for worse, I had a tendency to let them. But there are people, including a few of my teachers, who would absolutely swear that I was there during our senior year. One guy who was convinced that I wasn't there because I'd been held back, and a girlfriend who I still never really got over who couldn't have any kind of relationship with me ever again, which I found pretty awkward because she ended up at the same college very much within the periphery of my circle of friends there.